Chapter 61. Hospital Raccoon City had been built almost single-handedly by the Umbrella Corporation. When it was still a small Midwestern town, Umbrella moved in. Hospitals, subways, universities, modern buildings rose up one after another. Every structure, every brick in the city was tied to Umbrella. Walking its streets, a casual brush of shoulders could mean encountering one of their employees. When Leon reached Raccoon City Hospital, he stumbled upon a recorded confession from an Umbrella researcher. My name is Nathaniel Bard. The current time is 9:35 p.m., September 28th. I am the director of the Virus Research Center. I hope someone can come and rescue me, though I'm afraid there's little hope. They won't want me to live. The Umbrella Corporation, they will kill me. This Resident Evil outbreak in Raccoon City was caused by them. I hope what I say in this recording gets out and saves people. At least it will preserve my reputation. Umbrella, my employer, ordered me and my team to work on a bioweapon called the T-Virus. A sudden noise cut him off. Oh my God, what was that sound just now? I'll record again later. I need to see what's making that noise outside. The confession on the screen was Bard's will. Leon listened to the sounds from outside the hospital as he used his supervision to sweep the whole building. The hospital had been overrun. The only uninfected person left was the director who just recorded the confession, and he looked cooked. In Leon's estimation, in a few hours Umbrella's people would come for him, kill him, and steal the original T-Virus sample. But for now, Bard was lucky. Leon had arrived. He descended, followed by the Supermark 1 unit controlled by Jarvis. The drone arrived silently, a moment behind Leon. When they pushed through the hospital doors, several blood-soaked figures turned their heads. Doctors, nurses, security staff, all reeking of infection. "Handle them, Jarvis," Leon said, stepping toward the lab where Bard had secluded himself. He left the infected to the drone. Bard was a middle-aged man in a white lab coat, hair receding, face strained. He sat in his lab, separated from the lobby by a heavy iron door. On the other side of the door, something with a lizard-like head pounded at the metal, roaring like thunder, obviously drawn by Bard's voice. Leon recognized the thing instantly. Hunter Beta, an Umbrella bioweapon. In the games, it was a minor boss. In the field, still deadly. Leon gave it some respect. He moved in and struck, delivering a blow that released a massive shock of force. The Hunter Beta, along with the iron door, was blasted through and embedded in the opposite wall like a flattened slab. "Ah!" Bard screamed at the explosion and collapsed to the floor, terror written across his face. The sight of the door slammed into the wall made him think of the tyrant. Umbrella had sent a tyrant to finish him. He began to sweat uncontrollably, covering his mouth, shaking. Terrified, he crawled onto a chair and, hands trembling, clicked his recorder to resume. Before Bard could speak another word, Leon stepped into the room. "Director Bard?" Leon called. "Who are you?" Bard blinked, bewildered. He had expected a tyrant, not a man. "I'm here for the T-Virus original solution and the vaccine samples. It would be even better if you could give me your research data." Bard hardened. Facing another human felt somehow less terrifying than facing the tyrant. He narrowed his eyes. "How do you know there are virus samples and vaccines here? Only Umbrella should know." Leon cut him off and shifted his tone. "Don't assume I'm with Umbrella. I'm not. I'm here to find the virus and the vaccine to save this city." "Save the city?" Bard's voice shook, but he looked bolder now. Dying at human hands was a different fear than being torn apart by a bioweapon. "How do you know these things exist? No one outside Umbrella could know." Leon paused, then chose honesty for efficiency. "I'm not from this world. Your world consciousness asked me for help. That's how I know." He put the unbelievable claim forward bluntly. He knew that, in this world, presenting undeniable proof was more effective than elaborate lies. As long as he could demonstrate power, the most incredible statement would suddenly seem plausible. He inhaled, then exhaled sharply. A gust of air struck the opposite wall, blowing out a smooth, round hole. Dust sprayed through the room. Bard stared, eyes wide. The scientist in him, always rational, devoted to evidence, now looked feverish with something like worship. "Incredible," he whispered. "The force from your breath, to make a hole like that, it's impossible for a human body." "Are you really from another world?" Bard asked, whispering, then louder. "Please, what is another world like? Does our world actually have a consciousness?" He muttered, then probed more boldly, then broke into manic laughter. Leon had expected skepticism, not hysteria, but he understood. To a scientist who'd spent a life on the edge of forbidden knowledge, being confronted with evidence of other worlds and a world consciousness could unhinge a person. Leon gave Bard a light slap on the shoulder. We can talk about metaphysics later. For now, can you show me your research and results? Bard blinked, touched his receding hairline, and then fumbled for composure. Yes, follow me. I've printed everything, hard copies, the electronic files, I've destroyed them. He smiled weakly. I was going to burn these before I died. Thank God you arrived in time. Chapter 62, Outside the Police Station. Director Bard carried a thick stack of documents out of the safe and handed them to Leon with both hands. These are most of the critical experimental data, plus the research process and conclusions. Are you going to use this to restart the research? Leon casually lifted the 30-centimeter thick bound volume and began flipping through it on the spot. No, he said evenly. I'll finish reading them now, then head to Umbrella's underground research facility for the next stage of improvements. Finish reading them now? Bard thought. That would take until the seas ran dry. But what happened next stunned him even more. It wasn't reading, nor even skimming. Leon lifted a corner of the thick stack, loosened his grip, and the pages fell and riffled like a deck of cards. In 2 or 3 seconds, the entire volume had been shuffled. Leon shut his eyes. After a few more seconds, he pushed the bundle back into Bard's arms. That's enough. Burn them. Good, huh? Bard was speechless, staring between the documents and Leon's closed lids. I mean, I've already finished reading and memorized them, Leon explained, eyes still shut. But you were flipping the pages backward? Bard didn't try to reconcile how someone could memorize a 30-centimeter book in seconds. He was too baffled by the backward flipping. Just memorize the whole text, then reverse the page numbers in your head. It's simple, Leon said. Bard's mouth opened and closed. He didn't know whether to believe it, but he decided it was better than keeping the documents intact. If this man was the savior the world had found, some strange abilities were to be expected. He went for gasoline and burned the files to ash. Leon remained standing, eyes closed. It wasn't theatrics. When he had absorbed the experimental data he'd just memorized, something unusual happened. When he understood biochemical knowledge, his thinking grew exceptionally sharp and flexible. The superbrain's raw processing speed hadn't changed, but his research talent in biochemistry had leapt. Recalling the data produced a cascade of insights and ideas. So that's the gift, he thought. It's exactly the kind of enhancement I needed. He realized the world consciousness had amplified his talent specifically in biochemical research. Compared to others in this Resident Evil world, William Birkin, Alexia, Marcus, his innate talent now rivaled the best. But unlike them, he also had a superbrain. Their creativity might match his, but their actual research level was now many rungs below his. After Bard burned the papers and Leon opened his eyes, Bard leaned in. Do you need anything else? Bring me every T-virus stock solution and vaccine sample you have. We should leave now. Leon called out, Jarvis. Jarvis had been piloting the battle armor as it cleared the hospital of infected. The armor had fought its way from the first floor to the top. The zombies there were almost wiped out. Is Jarvis your companion? Bard asked cautiously. He's my artificial intelligence. You'll meet him soon, Leon said. He placed the virus stock and vaccine Bard had brought into a crate and handed it to Jarvis. Then, with a single motion, he grabbed Bard by the collar. Let's go. To the Raccoon City Police Department. Before Bard could fully scream, Leon and Jarvis shot into the sky. Seconds later, they were above the police department. Jarvis was still 10 kilometers behind, racing to catch up. Bard, suspended in Leon's grip, was still howling. Stop shouting! We're here! Leon snapped, giving Bard's collar a hard shake. Bard's feet dangled, and his shriek became even louder, which in turn drew the attention of the zombies besieging the station. They turned and craned toward the noise. Leon ignored Bard and used X-ray vision to scan the police department. Inside the not-large building, corpses and infected filled the rooms. The Raccoon City Police had reacted fast when the outbreak began on September 25th, 3 days ago. They set up shelters, rescued civilians, and rigged explosives on the streets. Their early actions saved many lives, but at a terrible cost. Most of the force had been lost. The collapse of the precinct began when infected refugees among those sheltered turned and attacked, compounded by relentless assaults from outside. Now, under Leon's scan, only 5 officers remained alive in the entire station. One of those survivors was Police Chief Brian Irons, a man who had holed up in his office. Irons had been deeply corrupt during his tenure. He took bribes and collaborated with Umbrella, even running an orphanage next door to the station as a source of experimental subjects. He was despicable. Leon had no patience for men like him. From a distance, he released twin heat beams that sliced through several walls and pinned Irons to the leather sofa in his office. The chief had been crouched over the corpse of the mayor's daughter, making notes and planning to turn her into a specimen. Without warning, 2 red scorch marks punched through the wall and ripped through his chest. He tapped the 2 holes with trembling fingers. The flesh had already seared and started to char. He gurgled in disbelief and slumped forward, collapsing face first onto the body. On the other side, Jarvis finally arrived and knelt in front of Leon with artificial grace, its armor smoking from the descent. Director Bard, slowly regaining composure, stared down at the police station gate below and gaped. "Raccoon City Police Department, we're already here." He looked up at Leon, who was holding him. "How did you do that?" he blurted. Leon smiled without answering. "Calm down at last? Honestly, your scream just now was at least 3 decibels louder than when my brother cried for help." "That was an accident. An accident. I'm not usually like this." Director Bard realized he'd lost his composure and awkwardly wiped imaginary sweat from his brow. He looked down. On the dark street, scattered zombies wandered, and more than a dozen rotten figures battered at the police station's gate. "What do we do now? Mr. Savior?" Bard asked tentatively. "Just call me Leon." Leon smiled. "Next, we need to get inside the police station." He lowered his height and exhaled a freezing breath as he approached the ground. Frost spread rapidly across the street. The standing and crouching zombies froze into icy statues. The layer of ice crept outward until a 300-meter radius around the police station was coated, turning the block into a realm of frost. The effect was only superficial. Objects were encased in ice, but not structurally altered. 1 or 2 sturdy, dimly glowing streetlights, trapped in the ice, still gave off a faint warmth and cast strange colors through the clear layer. "My goodness, it's like the ice god waved his scepter," Director Bard gushed, eyes reflecting the dreamlike scene. "That analogy isn't exactly right." Leon set Bard down. "After all, I'm just holding you." Bard laughed at Leon's friendly tone. "It's an honor to be your scepter." Leon shook his head and walked toward the police station, Bard trailing close behind, and occasionally stopping to inspect the frozen zombies and lights. He observed that the zombies trapped in the ice weren't moving. They were gradually losing vitality from lack of oxygen. It looked like they wouldn't take long to die off. "Amazing," he sighed, then hurried after Leon. Jarvis brought up the rear with metallic clanks. They reached the police station's iron gate. A handful of zombies had been frozen together into a single block of ice against the gate. Leon knocked the knuckles of his hand against the ice. It shattered, sending jagged fragments and the zombies inside crumbling to the ground. Standing at the gap, Leon peered through to survey the building beyond, then had Jarvis switch on its built-in amplifier. "Is anyone inside? The zombies on the street have been dealt with. Please open the door and let us in." The amplified voice carried across the block. The 4 people inside the station, resting in the lobby, were sure to hear. Leon watched through his vision as the officers inside stirred. The police department's broadcast for refugees was still looping on some car radios nearby. As long as they didn't force their way in, they wouldn't be mistaken for a threat. Within minutes, the front doors opened. A tall, thin black officer stepped out, hand on his holster, flashlight in the other hand. He scanned left and right, then jogged to the iron gate. Behind him, 2 more uniformed officers followed, gaping at the frost-coated street. "Wait a moment, I'll open the door and let you in," the black officer called. He looked over Leon and Bard. Finding no obvious weapons or injuries, he reached for the bolt. It was frozen solid. He strained at it. "This thing's stuck. I'll need a blowtorch," he muttered, frowning. "Fortunately, the zombies are frozen. Don't make any noise. I'll be right back. No need, officer. Before he could move, Leon grabbed Bard by the collar, vaulted the gate, and landed beside the black officer. Sometimes the most primitive way is the simplest. Leon raised an eyebrow. The officer stepped back in surprise. Is that kung fu? Incredible. And you saved me a trip for a blowtorch, Leon said. He gestured to the other two officers. Come with me. Let's get inside. It's suddenly freezing out here. Maybe I can find some jackets from the station. No need for jackets. I can handle this, one replied. But my friend needs to come in with me. Leon snapped his fingers. Jarvis, come in. Outside the courtyard, Jarvis's thrusters screamed and a burst of flame lit the air as the steel armor clattered over the wall and into the yard. Jesus! The black officer yelped, instinctively drawing his weapon. What the hell is that? We'll talk about it inside. Leon gave a small, mysterious smile and stepped into the station. Before he went further, he glanced back and saw, in a building a few dozen meters away, a flicker of movement, someone in a red skirt at a window. A few minutes later, in the police station lobby, everyone sat in a loose circle. So, he's the savior. You're the director of the virus center. That's a mech. The ice outside was caused by his breath. An umbrella is responsible for this crisis, the black officer summarized. Leon's explanations had been punctuated by Bard's assurances, and at first the three officers were skeptical. Leon froze a table with a breath to demonstrate his ability, and only then did their expressions soften. All right, the black officer said. We'll take that for now. Let us introduce ourselves, he added. I'm Marvin Branagh. He nodded toward the other two. This is Elliot Edward, and that one, he jerked his thumb toward the heavy-set man. We call him Old Fatty. Only the three of you? No one else in the station? Bard asked. He still wore his white lab coat, which lent him an air of authority. Marvin pointed toward a medical partition at the back of the lobby. We have one more person, but he's not well. Mr. Bard, you'll have to take a look. Bard looked to Leon. When Leon nodded, he said, I have no problem. Take me to him. The three officers exchanged glances, all tacitly acknowledging that Leon had taken the lead. That made their earlier doubts fade and lent weight to the stories both Leon and Bard had told. Everyone was gathered in the police station entrance hall. Further in sat the reception desk. The floor was laid with brown marble tiles, and ancient stone pillars held up the ceiling. Mr. Lyon's freezing breath hadn't reached indoors, so this part of the building remained untouched, stately and retro. Wall lamps set into the pillars were gilded with gold dust and cast a warm, sunlight-like glow. Behind the reception desk stood a Statue of Liberty sculpture. Mr. Lyon remembered this station had once been a museum, later converted to hide the entrance to an umbrella underground lab. The hatch lay under the statue and required 3 stone slabs to activate. They passed the reception desk. Between the statue and the counter, someone had set up a makeshift emergency room with medical partitions. On a stretcher lay a man with a pale face, big and muscular, short hair neatly cropped, but his body temperature was frighteningly low. He's infected, Bard said immediately, moving the man to inspect him. The wounds on his arm. Looks like the infection started less than 3 hours ago. There's still hope. Why would you keep an infected person in the police station? That's dangerous, another officer protested. Bard had seen too many people get others killed by refusing to abandon infected companions. The 3 officers who'd been relieved at finding someone alive turned solemn at his words. He's a STARS member, Brad Vickers. He's important to us, Officer Marvin said. We found him collapsed in an alley and brought him back, Elliot added. There aren't many of us left here. If he turns, we'll deal with it. So we still had hope, and we waited for you. What did you mean earlier? Still hope? The officers asked Bard and Mr. Lyon expectantly. Mr. Lyon called Jarvis over and opened his briefcase. Inside were 3 vials of dark blue viral stock, 5 rose-red vaccine samples, and 4 vials of antiviral serum. Marvin's hand trembled. There's a vaccine for the cannibalistic disease? Umbrella makes the viruses, Mr. Lyon said. They also research countermeasures. Bard took a vial of serum from the case and injected Brad's arm. After a full tube was administered, Brad's pallor eased immediately. The 3 officers visibly relaxed, trusting Mr. Lyon's words more. Since you're here to help save this city, you must have a reason for coming to the police station, Bard said. Elliot, the middle-aged officer, brightened. What can we do to help? Mr. Lion walked to the Statue of Liberty. There's an umbrella research facility beneath this station. I plan to go inside and develop more effective vaccines. I need to enter through the lab entrance under this statue. Elliot's excitement turned to regret. You're serious? I always suspected a secret passage. Officer Phillips was right. Too bad she'll never hear this. Phillips had been his superior. She was already dead. Mr. Lion patted Elliot's shoulder. You've done well. Step back. I'll open the passage. They took a few confused steps back. Mr. Lion half crouched before the statue, then struck like lightning, sending a blast through the thick, steel-reinforced stone slab beneath the base. The slabs gave as if they were soft jelly. There was no resistance, his face calm, breathing steady, arms relaxed, just a sudden lifting motion. He raised the entire statue and base as easily as a block of tofu. The brutality of the motion made everyone's eyelids twitch, but they had no energy to dwell on it. A flight of stone steps was revealed. At the bottom lay an open secret chamber, extravagantly decorated, enough to radiate a luxurious aura even from a corner. Gods, this secret room was under our noses all these years, Elliot shouted, clutching his head. Marvin's face darkened. The director colluded with Umbrella. The fat officer was too angry to speak. They all looked to Mr. Lion. What now? First, search the surrounding area for survivors. Clear the remaining zombies in the police station. Then we go into the Underground Research Institute together, Mr. Lion said. I froze the streets outside. The zombies out there are immobilized. Searching for survivors is up to you. Marvin nodded. Don't worry, the three of us will go right now. They quickly organized and left the station in pairs to search. Mr. Lion turned to his armor. Jarvis, clear the zombies inside the police station. Yes, young master. The armor launched itself into the offices, hunting down the infected. 20 minutes later, Super Mark I returned to the hall with splatters of zombie blood on its chassis and a scratch across its chest, likely from a liquor ambush. Mission accomplished, young master, Jarvis reported. Marvin's team came back with 3 survivors, a father and his daughter, and an Asian woman. The father was stocky and gruff, cradling his daughter and shielding her face. The Asian woman wore a red dress, black stockings, and high heels, beautiful, cool, and acutely composed. Marvin looked dejected. These were the only survivors we could find. It's all right, Mr. Lion said, placing a reassuring hand on Marvin's shoulder. Once we develop a new vaccine, more will be saved. Elliot introduced the survivors. This is Robert Kendo. He owns Kendo's gun shop behind the station, and his daughter. The woman produced an ID. I'm an FBI investigator. Ada Wong. I was here to investigate Umbrella. She appraised Mr. Lion coolly. They call you a savior. Can you prove it? Mr. Lion smiled. I don't need to prove anything. Ada had been watching him from a building when he froze the streets. Asking questions now was an attempt to size him up. Kendo suddenly blurted out, desperation in his voice. You have antiviral serum, right? Give it to me. If you give me the serum, I'll do whatever you say. Everyone stared. Director Bard peered at the girl in Kendo's arms. She's infected, he said. Mr. Lion added, it's early. She can still be saved. Before Kendo or anyone else could react, Jarvis extended an arm, took a vial of serum from the case, and injected the little girl. She had been barely conscious. After the injection, she slumped further into her father's arms. Emma, how are you? Damn it. How dare you, you iron lump. Emma, your eyes, are they coming back? Kendo cried, panic and relief mixing in his voice. The vaccine acted fast. The girl's pale eyes began to regain color, sooner, though she remained unconscious and would need time to recover. Good, Bard said softly, relieved. A happy ending for once. Satisfied the girl was stabilizing, Mr. Lion turned to the others. New mission. Marvin, one of you stays to protect the survivors and guard the station. The other 2 come with us into the Research Institute to make new vaccines. He didn't waste another word. Mr. Lion disappeared down the revealed stairway with decisive strides. Director Bard and Jarvis followed, 1 man and 1 suit of armor, into the underground passage, racing against the clock. Chapter 65, Ada Wong. The remaining few exchanged looks. Marvin gave the order, Kendo, you stay here. Elliot, come with me. Everyone else, rest here. As you wish, Marvin, the portly officer replied obediently. Is he really the savior? Old man Kendo stammered at last. I haven't even had a chance to thank him. You can thank him when he returns. Thank him with your recovered daughter. Marvin helped place Kendo's daughter on a stretcher. But are you sure you want to go down into Umbrella's lab? Is that safe? Duncan asked, still uneasy. Mr. Lyon's strong. Nothing's going to happen to him, Officer Elliot said. It sounds impossible, Duncan muttered. We don't even know for sure he's the savior. We trust him, the portly officer cut in. Marvin stepped out of the medical partition. All right, Elliot, let's follow him. Two officers, one black and one white, drew pistols and headed into the underground passage. Ada Wong watched quietly from the side. After the two officers disappeared, she spoke up suddenly. You all seem close. Oh, absolutely. We were shocked when that mech in the freezing breath showed up. He saved our lives. The portly officer sank down onto a sofa. You aren't bothered about being left alone here? Ada glanced toward the passage. The station still needs someone to guard it. The portly man frowned. You've got a different opinion, ma'am. Ada rose and walked toward the passage with deliberate grace. No opinion. I just wanted to say goodbye for now. She waved, ducked into the passage, and slipped out of sight. Hey, you can't go. Damn it, she's gone in. Let's chase her. Kendo snapped, panic in his eyes. The portly officer was unconcerned. Kendo, aren't you worried? Duncan asked. The officer shrugged. Let her. Whether she causes trouble or snoops around, she can't do anything to Mr. Lyon. Could an ordinary agent get in the way of a man who could tear the Statue of Liberty out of the ground? On the other side, 4 people in a mech stepped into the underground elevator that led deeper below. The moment the battle armor entered, the elevator's circuit tripped an alarm. Overloaded. Jarvis, you're too heavy, Mr. Lyon complained. Sir, the armor is overweight. The pilot, Jarvis, shifted the suit to hover, preparing to adjust its height as the elevator descended. I'll never let you pilot my armor again, Mr. Lyon grumbled and pressed the down button. The doors began to close, but at the last second, a red figure slid across the ground and squeezed inside, stopping directly in front of him. Wow, black, Mr. Lyon murmured and subtly drew his gaze back. Ada smoothed her skirt and stood. These are safety shorts, gentlemen, she said lightly. Because I'm a gentleman, I'll tell you, you're exposed, Mr. Lyon replied. Oh, I'm grateful for the warning, gentleman Mr. Lyon. Ada deliberately squeezed in ahead of him in the roomy elevator, tilting her head in a way that put them almost chest to chest. Their breaths were close. The proximity was deliberate. Mr. Lyon recognized the tactic. He'd seen it before. Natasha pulled stunts like this during late-night conversations, and he'd even dealt with Ada's own theatrics in his previous life. He wasn't going to be played. He kept his cool and shifted slightly away. Ada's eyes flashed with surprise. His small movement confirmed the image she'd wanted to project. I'm just doing my job. If there's danger down there, handling it's part of mine as well, she said, and unzipped a pocket to pull out a pistol. Dr. Bard is coming down with you. Aren't you worried something might happen to him? Director Bard, who had been silent until now, answered for once. I'm fine. Mr. Lyon will protect me. Since he'd started following Mr. Lyon, Bard's sense of security had soared. This feeling, never once present before the outbreak, not even in the safety of Umbrella, had become addictive. Bard found himself thinking how he might always stay with this man and work for him. Compared to Umbrella, Mr. Lyon was the kind of man you wanted on your side. Ada's questions continued. She'd worked as a freelance agent for HCF and sometimes for a faction called the Family. Extracting information was what she did. So Mr. Lyon's power, is it really that great? He'll show you soon enough. Mr. Lyon didn't answer directly. The elevator pinged. The doors slid open and the group filed out, 5 people in one mech. A long set of stairs led down from the landing. Mr. Lyon took the lead, opening locked doors and freezing the zombies that lurked in their path. The corridor opened into the station's underground sewer system. Go straight through the sewers and you'll reach the Umbrella Research Facility, Marvin called down. Mr. Lyon didn't plan to wade through ankle-deep filth. He rose and hovered airborne, holding his breath as the stench was electronically suppressed at the receptors that had not yet acclimated. He's flying! Marvin and the others watched, startled at first, then wide-eyed with renewed astonishment. They followed him anyway, stepping down into thigh-high muck as they moved. Ada stayed on the steps, staring at the foul water trickling beneath her feet, then up at Mr. Lion and the hovering armor. Her lips trembled as she measured the options. Mr. Lion watched her with an amused tilt to his expression. Finally, Ada sighed and jumped in. "Stay behind me and keep your guard up," Mr. Lion called, then floated forward as if hesitating over the word slowly. His casual clothes looked oddly out of place while he flew, like a high school kid trying to save the world between classes. They were getting close to the Umbrella Laboratory. In the murky water and along the moss-covered cave walls, mutated creatures sprang out at them without warning. Some were once people, bloated corpses fused with leech-like mouths. Others were meter-long sewer insects. Some were massive, twisted crocodiles that stretched 20 meters. For all anyone knew, Umbrella had turned a simple sewer into an ecosystem worse than any open coastline. The monsters were numerous and vicious. A small special forces team would have been at serious risk. But Mr. Lion flew ahead. He punched through monsters and smashed through walls. Not one creature survived a single strike. No barrier stopped him even for a second. The group moved forward without impediment. Aside from the grim surroundings, it felt almost like a walk in the park. Even Ada Wong, constantly on edge, only managed to shoot a zombie fish that was playing dead. Other than that, she hadn't killed a thing. "Our Mr. Lion does inspire confidence," Ada said, wringing out her skirt with distaste. "I'll admit it, he's a proper gentleman." She gave him a half-smile. Mr. Lion didn't answer. They reached a platform above a sewage treatment pool. Everything here was constructed over swirling water. Huge treatment machines clanked and roared. For the moment, they were out of the submerged tunnels. Marvin swept a flashlight over the area, revealing a few foul-smelling corpses tucked into corners. "Look at these people. Lab coats, combat suits. Umbrella really had a big research base here," Elliot muttered through gritted teeth. "They ran this city. Those parasites deserve to die. Centralized power. Typical of this country, isn't it?" Ada said idly as she followed Mr. Lion. "Don't you agree, sir?" Mr. Lion didn't reply at first. Then, without warning, he barked. "Back off!" Ada barely had time to be startled before his hand clamped onto her arm and hauled her to his side. A whoosh sounded behind them. Turning, they saw a giant insect with its mouthparts spread wide sweep past where she'd been standing. The failed ambush creature tried to flee, but Mr. Lion's whip-like kick smashed it into the wall until it exploded in a spray of viscera. Ada felt her pulse spike. "Thanks," she said, leaning away and letting go of his arm. She couldn't help noticing the solid, marble-like hardness of his forearm. "Nice physique," he raised an eyebrow. "I think so too. Consider it a favor you owe me." "Vain men aren't popular with women," Ada said, curling one corner of her mouth. "You never know," he replied, and they moved on. Deeper into the treatment area, they found a monitoring room. Through its glass, they could see a platform on the far side where armored cable cars sat idle. "We're here," Mr. Lion said. "Those cable cars will get us to the research institute." "Thank God," Director Bard gasped. He was exhausted and stepped forward to open the iron door, but the door was locked solid. Bard cursed under his breath. All eyes turned to Mr. Lion. "Let me do it. I can pick locks," Ada said, reaching into her bag. She tapped a few tools into her hand, already moving to the door. Before she could make a move, Mr. Lion planted one palm against the iron and pushed. The entire door, along with a section of the surrounding wall, gave way like cardboard. The two of them stared, speechless. Mr. Lion spread his hands and offered a sheepish shrug. "Maybe next time tell me you can pick locks first." "I take it back," Ada said, tucking her tools away. "Let's go to the cable car." He started to head through the opening, then glanced at a hidden recess in the monitoring room. "Madam, if you plan on joining us, you may come out now." Heads snapped toward the shadowed corner, and every gun was up in an instant. A thin, middle-aged woman with sunken eyes stepped into view, wearing a white lab coat and pointing a pistol at them. She spoke with cold precision. "Police, you shouldn't be here. Only the infected are left in the institute. Leave, now." Ada leveled her own gun and stepped forward. "You and your husband made the virus. You're responsible for this disaster." "No pleasantries," the woman snapped. "Hand over the G-virus." Ada's eyes narrowed. "My mission is to shut down Umbrella. The G-virus is far deadlier than the T-virus. It can't be left in your hands." Hearing the name G-virus made the woman's expression shift. Something darker flared in her eyes. So that's it, she sneered. You came for the G-virus? Don't expect me to hand it over. With a sudden motion, she threw a grenade and squeezed off a shot at Ada. Grenade, take cover! Marvin and the police officers lunged to shield Mr. Lion, intending to tackle him down, but Mr. Lion moved with uncanny speed. He dodged aside, caught the grenade in his left hand, and yanked Ada back with his right. A round clipped Ada's arm. She grimaced but stayed upright. A dull thump sounded as he opened his palm. Bits of blackened ash and fragments clung to his hand for a moment, then fluttered away. His palm was unmarked and clean. The whole group froze. He had just cupped a live grenade with his bare hand and walked away without a scratch. The woman in the lab coat stared, stunned. Even she suspected her husband, turned into a monster, couldn't have done such a thing. Without hesitation, Mr. Lion stepped forward, grabbed the woman, and flung her toward Marvin. Secure her. We're moving to the research institute. They bound her hands and hustled out onto the platform. Ada opened her mouth to question him, but remembered the grenade. Remembered that whatever Mr. Lion was, he'd just saved them. She let it go. At the cable car, the problem was bureaucracy. The cars only operated with staff wristbands. Yani Bo-jin, the scientist they'd just captured, recovered enough to grin defiantly. I won't hand over the permission wristbands, she said. Give up. They all turned to Mr. Lion, half expecting another display of force, break the mechanism, rip the car free. Ada's voice came out sharper than she meant. Wait, don't. Forcing the cable car could cause a malfunction. No, she added more quietly, pointing at Yani. We should interrogate her first. She's the one with the wristband. On the way here, Ada's composed, cool facade had been battered by one bizarre event after another. Now, standing on the platform with the scientist under guard and Mr. Lion calm as ever, she felt that composure crack for the first time. You have no idea of his power. Even after making such a massive sacrifice, Ada Wong was met with nothing but a puzzled look from Mr. Lion. What are you talking about? He asked. Do you think I'm all brawn and no brain? Mr. Lion frowned in annoyance and snapped his fingers. Jarvis, I'm here, young master. The inconspicuous iron armor stepped forward, opened the cable car, and started moving. Yes, several data cables snaked from Jarvis's body and connected to the cable car's external interface. A few seconds later, the screen flickered and the armored door hissed open. See? I have artificial intelligence too. Mr. Lion winked at Ada and was the first to step into the cable car. The others followed in an orderly line, praising him. Ada stood frozen for a beat, then tilted her head and laughed softly. Ha! What a fool! She wasn't sure whether she meant him or herself. She tapped her forehead and went in after them. Under Jarvis's control, the tram started smoothly, gradually picking up speed. There ought to be a lot of zombies and mutated creatures in the lab, Mr. Lion said, standing among them. So, same as always, I go first, you follow. After we clear the underground base, he continued, you can help catalog the research materials and equipment. I already have an initial idea for improving the vaccine. If all goes well, I should have results by tomorrow morning. Bard looked impressed. Marvin and Elliot were excited, and Ada clapped once, her eyes flashing slightly. What a boastful kid. Only 17 or 18. Go to university first. Yani muttered scornfully. The tram reached the station quickly. The moment they stepped out, everyone gasped. I don't even know how much Umbrella sunk into this place, Marvin said. This is another world. The underground laboratory was nothing like the sewers they'd passed through before. Where the sewers had been cluttered with rough pipes and reeked of filth, the Umbrella facility had high-strength titanium walls. A cold, metallic sheen ran through the entrance, and pale indicator lights ran deep into the complex like sunlight. Marvin and the others felt as if they'd stepped into the future. Even Mr. Lion seemed to take on a different air. He didn't batter doors down with his fists like in the sewers. Instead, Jarvis handled the data decryption. Admittedly, in the sewers there had been nothing electronic to hack, so punching doors had been the fastest option. With a few clicks, Jarvis infiltrated the facility's authorization system. 3 heavy gates guarding the base slowly rose, and the 5 of them were automatically granted high-level access. Every time they approached a door, an intelligent system opened it for them. Inside, the lab was thick with humanoid zombies. Mr. Lion sent Jarvis to clear them while the others waited in the corridor. Then they began to search the surrounding rooms. They found several researchers' diaries. The entries tracked the outbreak. Someone infected during an experiment, that person turning into a zombie and being dealt with by security, panic spreading, the virus leaking out, and rodents carrying it to the surface. "I didn't expect it to start like this," Director Bard murmured, rubbing his eyes. "I thought only my team was doing this research." Marvin tried to console him. "Dr. Bard, you were forced into this by people with bad intentions. What matters now is saving what we can." While Bard and Marvin spoke, Ada found Yanni Bojan across the hall. Mr. Lion was in the security room, scanning old records on the computer. Suddenly his phone lit up with a communication, and Jarvis's voice came through. "Young Master, the mutated creatures inside the base have been cleared. However, I found a creature similar to a tyrant. It is chasing a little girl hiding in a corner. Shall I rescue her?" "Little girl? Could it be Sherry Birkin?" Mr. Lion grabbed his phone. Sherry Birkin was the daughter of Yanni and William Birkin. In the files Mr. Lion knew, William Birkin had injected himself with the G virus and become a mutated monster driven by a compulsion to propagate the virus. The G virus spread stably only through parental transmission. Non-parental infection caused rapid death. In the records, William had been obsessively pursuing his daughter Sherry. In the recorded history, she had been rescued by Leon S. Kennedy and Claire, a name Mr. Lion knew well. "You take Sherry and lure that monster here," Mr. Lion said. "I'll deal with it." Jarvis's Super Mark I firepower was more than enough to kill William Birkin. But G-virus-infected individuals could mutate and regenerate continuously. If Jarvis fought Birkin directly inside the lab, the battle could tear the facility apart. Jarvis acknowledged the plan and then dropped back to fetch the creature and the girl. Mr. Lion returned the group to a wide platform area, ideal for a fight, and planted himself in front. A few minutes later, Jarvis descended, holding a small blonde girl. A trail of exhaust and a bright flash announced his arrival. "Sherry!" Yanni cried, rushing forward. "Mommy!" The girl looked relieved more than terrified. "Mr. Iron Man saved me!" Jarvis landed and released the girl. She ran straight into Yanni's arms. Ada had been restraining Yanni earlier, and at the sight of her daughter, her hold slackened for a heartbeat. Yanni seized the moment, broke free, and hugged Sherry fiercely. "Sherry, I'm sorry. I haven't been able to find you these past few days," Yanni said, stroking the girl's hair. Sherry's small voice trembled. "Mommy, Daddy is so scary. He wants to catch me." Yanni froze, looking at her daughter. Relief washed over her, then her expression hardened into something conflicted and terrible. "He didn't hurt you or feed you anything, did he?" she asked. "No, Daddy hasn't caught me yet," Sherry shook her head. For a moment, Yanni looked as if she might melt with relief, but then her face set in a terrible resolve. "I'm sorry, Sherry. I have to do this." She turned instantly, twisted the gun from Ada's hands, and raised it toward her daughter. Ada reacted a fraction of a second faster, wrenching Yanni's arm and pinning her down. "What are you doing? That's your daughter," she hissed, cold. "Because she's William Birkin's and my daughter. I can't let her live." Yanni's voice trembled between anguish and steel. The others stared, mouths open in disbelief. What kind of mother could speak so cruelly? Little Sherry slid back on her legs and crumpled to the floor, bewildered and frightened. Mommy. You don't understand," Yanni snapped at them. "You don't know what kind of monster he is. The G-virus cannot be allowed to spread. If it does, the world is finished. If Sherry stays here, William Birkin will infect her and turn her into a monster. Even if she escapes, he'll keep chasing her. I can't let the G-virus spread." Marvin stepped forward, face hardening. "No matter what you say, that's no reason to kill your own daughter." "Excuse me, William Birkin? That must be the monster from earlier," Mr. Lion interjected, tilting his head. "Mrs. Yanni Bojan, have you ever considered that killing your husband could also prevent him from spreading the virus?" "What did you say?" Yanni looked at him, disbelief and fury warring in her eyes. "You have no idea of his power. Is that so?" Mr. Lion moved forward, heading toward the opening through which William Birkin had just escaped. William Birkin staggered out of the research facility's main gate. Under the harsh lights, his shape resolved. The right side of his body grotesquely swollen, a huge eye embedded in the bulging flesh of his arm. Crimson muscle fibers tore through the skin and twisted together. The left side was more like the pale, hollow thing it had become. His dead eyes locked immediately onto Sherry in the crowd. He let out a roar. He seemed to double in size, like a starving beast that had finally found a feast. He lowered his head and charged, his hideous right hand splayed to sweep away anything in his path. Mr. Lion stood at the front and met him without flinching. Against the monster's enormous arm, the man looked almost slight. Everyone around him felt a cold squeeze of fear. They all knew Mr. Lion's reputation. He was formidable. But Yanni had warned them this thing was on another level, seemingly unstoppable. Ada and Marvin even raised their pistols, ready to cover a retreat. The clash lasted only an instant. The creature that had been William Birkin moved with shocking speed, but Mr. Lion was faster. He twisted with a movement too quick for the eye and threw a hook. William Birkin's head exploded like an overripe melon struck by a blow. In the stunned silence of the crowd, Mr. Lion withdrew his fist and turned. His clothes were clean. The headless body went limp and crashed to the ground. "How powerful did you say he was?" Mr. Lion asked Yanni. Her face was a mask of disbelief. She stammered, voice shaking. "You doing this will only accelerate his mutation. He'll just grow stronger. You should." She never finished. Mr. Lion turned again and fired a heat beam into the corpse. Within seconds, there was nothing left but a scattering of blackened carbon ash, most of it blown away with a soft puff of air from him. The monster that could have birthed 4 or 5 different stages in the game had given its final performance. "Now what?" Mr. Lion asked. Yanni was silent. She had struggled with the decision to kill her husband, hadn't been able to harden her heart, and now she no longer had to choose. The man she had married had ruined everything. She walked forward like a ghost and lifted the handful of carbon ash at Mr. Lion's feet. She cupped it, held it to her face, and tears ran down, unnoticed. "Mommy." Little Sherry crept forward timidly, then clung to Mr. Lion's leg instead of going all the way up. She didn't dare approach. The Birkins had never been loving parents. Sherry had first been chased by the mutated William, and then nearly shot by Yanni in some twisted act of duty. In this world, she had lost every anchor, material and emotional. Only one piece of comfort remained. The armored man who had ordered her rescue, the Iron Man they had all called. She clung to him now like a child to a life raft. Mr. Lion said nothing, but stroked Sherry's hair once. There was nothing he could say that would patch the family's wounds. The little girl would have to find the strength herself. "Let's go inside," he said finally. "The place has been cleared. We need to produce the new vaccine as soon as possible." He set people into motion. "Marvin, Elliot, you and Jarvis go fetch every resource you can from this research facility, anything useful. Ada Wong, you do whatever you do. If you want to steal the G-virus or poke around elsewhere, that's your call. Bard, come with me and assist in developing the vaccine. Sherry, if you can help, bring people coffee, run errands, anything. Oh, and Jarvis, terminate and destroy this facility's self-destruct program. I don't want the base blowing up halfway through our research." Everyone agreed and dispersed. Sherry wiped her eyes, hesitated by the room Yanni had entered, then bit her lip and ran to the kitchen to make coffee. Ada caught Mr. Lion's sleeve. "You knew my identity was fake? Since when?" she asked. "From the moment I first saw you," he replied. "Oh, then why let me follow you all the way? You're a freelance agent. You work for a lot of factions." "That's right. You interested in working with me, saving the world and all that? You want to recruit me? Ha, sounds interesting. I'll think about it, Mr. Lion." Ada tried to hook his chin with a finger before leaving. He dodged, and she gave him a cool smile. "It was nice meeting you. Thank you." She turned and slipped into the inner passage, waving as she vanished. As expected of Agent Wong, still likes being mysterious even in her 20s. Mr. Leon muttered. He released Bard, then took to the air toward the laboratory. At Redstone's subway station, Jill Valentine said goodbye to the others near the departing train. "Jill, are you sure you want to go find Stark? The Raccoon City Police Department isn't exactly nearby," Carlos said. "I can't just stand by," she answered. "He said he would save this city, and I believe him. I have to try, even if it's just a little." She checked her ammunition. Carlos sighed. "I don't know where you get this kind of trust. After seeing him in action, would you still doubt him?" Jill shot back, picking up a rifle. Fine. Once I'm done, I'll meet you at the police department. She held up 2 fingers and smiled. See you there. Then she ran into the burning streets. 2 hours later in the lab, Mr. Lion snapped his fingers and held up 2 test tubes of red liquid. The antidote and the airborne vaccine for the T-virus, done. He handed the tubes to Bard. Run tests on mice, especially check whether the vaccine can be effective through airborne diffusion. To increase its reach, he had modified the T-virus's transmission mechanism. Where the T-virus had once spread only through fluids and blood, his modifications made it transmissible through the air. The original virus from the films had been devastating. This version's transmission efficiency now neared that of the future C-virus, with the potential to wreak catastrophic damage. Fortunately, as Mr. Lion opened that Pandora's box, he had simultaneously developed an air-diffusible vaccine to lock it down. Half an hour later, Bard reported, the vaccine and serum worked on all the white mice. Jarvis predicts the effectiveness in humans will differ by no more than 0.3%. What about the effective range once airborne? As you predicted, when diffused into the air, it's effective within 30 meters and lasts about half an hour. Excellent. Marvin, start the production workshop. Begin mass-producing the new T-virus vaccine and serum. Mr. Lion then picked up a bottle of dark purple liquid. And this, the new G-virus serum, test it as well. Bard's hand trembled with awe. You developed an airborne G-virus? Not airborne, Mr. Lion corrected. The G-virus hasn't spread widely enough to require an air-diffusible countermeasure. This is a potent anti-G-virus serum. It can save someone infected for up to 20 hours. Bard breathed in relief and took the serum eagerly. I'll start tests right away. Mr. Lion reached for the coffee Sherry had brewed, took a sip, and set the cup down. Next, he said, it's time for my own research. 6.5 hours later, Mr. Lion returned to the East Wing lobby of the Research Institute, rubbing his forehead. Marvin and the others clustered around him. It was 7 a.m. on September 29th. Brother Lion, do you need to rest? Little Sherry asked, holding a small box. Inside were the ashes of Anne Birkin, cremated a few hours earlier, plus some charred remnants of William Birkin. No, I'm fine. Just a bit irritated, Mr. Lion said, waving a hand. Over the past 5 hours, he had combined data on the progenitor virus with the T-virus and G-virus and, with the superbrain running at full capacity, had produced something new. He hadn't spent decades on it like William Birkin, but the result was better than any work he'd seen, the S-virus prototype. This new virus had terrifying infectivity and lethality. It could spread through the air, showed extreme vitality, and remained active for at least 6 hours after exposure. Mr. Lion estimated the chance of an infected person turning into a zombie was over 90%. Those zombies would be supercharged with immense strength and be difficult to kill. But if a host survived, they would retain their sanity, gain absolute physical enhancement, and possess powerful regenerative abilities. There were limits. In airborne transmission efficiency, it was still worse than a typical pneumonia. The breath, or rather droplets, of an infected person would not directly cause infection. Only when bodily fluids or blood with a high viral load were exposed and evaporated would airborne spread occur. Even so, if Spencer, Wesker, or others learned of the S-virus's properties, they would see it as a ladder of human evolution and immediately push for global dissemination. The world consciousness had flooded him with elation when the virus synthesized successfully, but Lion didn't want that kind of power unleashed. What he needed was a 100% reliable agent that could enhance human regenerative capability without turning people into monsters. Tony's body was the priority. It would be disastrous if Tony became a zombie. Given the high mutation rate, Lion suspected that after the Raccoon City crisis, he'd need to travel to Europe and combine traits from Plaga parasites and E-mold to refine the S-virus prototype. Before that, he planned to return to Marvel to compare the flow of time between the two worlds. In a closing experiment, Lion took advantage of his opportunity and mixed a drop of his own blood with the S-virus prototype. Since awakening his abilities, his blood had acquired Kryptonian factors. It was now a fusion of Kryptonian and human. What he called Kryptonian blood should have been compatible. The results were catastrophic. When the two mixed in the container, The Kryptonian blood seemed to devour the S-virus prototype, then went into a frenzy of replication. In a few breaths, the blood appeared alive, corroding the container and trying to breach the air. If it escaped, combined with the S-virus's airborne traits and the blood's superactivity, Lion didn't want to imagine the consequences. The world consciousness poured fear and despair into him in that moment. He immediately incinerated the sample with his heat ray. The glass vessel turned to ash on the test bench. That destructive failure made Lion realize how much farther he had to go in bloodline research. He rubbed his forehead in frustration as he left the lab. "Bard, how are the vaccine and serum production and tests?" he asked, handing the syringe containing the golden S-virus prototype to Jarvis and instructing it to keep the sample secure. He had destroyed all other traces of the S-virus prototype and even demolished the room to prevent anyone from breaking in. The syringe in Jarvis's care was now the only original sample left. "The G-virus serum experiments were very successful," Director Bard reported, holding a stack of papers. "All organisms infected within 5 hours were cured after injection. We've also produced sufficient quantities of the new T-virus vaccine and serum to cover the entire city. And with Mr. Jarvis's help, we've adapted the serum into antiviral bombs, over 500 units produced," Jarvis added. Mr. Lion nodded. "That's enough. Start operations and begin the citywide vaccine distribution. I believe in a few hours, Raccoon City will be back to normal." Marvin and Elliot stiffened to attention, as if taking a salute. "We'll move the bombs right away, Mr. Lion," Marvin called and hurried off with Elliot. "Remember to bring Jarvis." Lion had Jarvis pilot the battle armor to help with transport. He glanced toward Ada Wong, who was leaning against the wall. "I thought you were gone. Aren't you in a hurry to hand the G-virus over to your boss?" Ada had apparently showered and changed at the Institute. Now she wore a red jacket, black slim-fit pants, and sunglasses, looking very put together. "That was my old boss," she said, sliding her shades down slightly. "I've got a better one now." She walked up to Lion with a casual, swinging gait. "Want to take me on long-term, Boss Lion?" she asked, chin tilted. Over the past 9 hours, she'd watched Lion in action, his unimaginable power, brilliant mind, and most importantly, his heart. He was like a blazing sun. Eda admitted she was curious and wanted to be close, to observe this savior the world consciousness had found. For now, she decided to stay by his side. "Is this an application?" Lion raised an eyebrow. He'd assumed a free agent like Ada wouldn't want to be obedient. "If it's a job application, do you think I qualify?" she asked. "You barely pass. Congratulations, you're hired. From now on, call me boss," Lion smiled. "Set your own salary, provided I earn some legitimate income in this world." "So I'm an unpaid intern?" Ada grinned. "Or do you prefer other forms of payment?" "Sorry, our company doesn't pay interns," Lion replied, not taking the bait. His attention had long been captured by Natasha. He crouched and scooped Sherry up. "Come on, Sherry. I'll carry you. It's almost time to leave." Ada wasn't offended. She smiled meaningfully and slowly fell into step behind them. Half an hour later, they were ready. They took the cable car back down and then slogged through the sewers. This time, Lion had Sherry on his back. Ada looped around his neck, and he hoisted a stack of wooden boxes filled with bombs. Marvin and the others carried armfuls as well. When they returned to the police station, the fat officer on duty assumed they'd been out resupplying. More than a dozen survivors had gathered there. When they learned the boxes contained antiviral bombs and vaccines, excitement swept through the group. Old man Kendo and his daughter Emma came to find Lion, bowing and thanking him profusely. "Kendo, no need to thank me," Leon said lightly. "Just pull your weight when we deploy the bombs." He ruffled little Emma's hair. "Marvin says you're the best gunsmith here. Take care of yourself and your daughter." "Then what about me?" little Sherry asked from behind, tugging Lion's sleeve. She clutched the urn, shoulders hunched as if bracing against the whole unfriendly world. No one here had been part of her life before today. Everyone was a stranger, yet she had the courage to seek someone to rely on. Lion paused, memories of his own first lonely awakening flashing through his mind. He bent and patted Sherry's head. "All right, I'll protect you, Sherry." Sherry's face lit up. She hugged the urn, smiled through tears, and laughed. Chapter 70. Saving the City and Farewell. Leon. A voice rang from the police station entrance. Jill Valentine, still in her blue denim vest, pushed the door open. Bard and Carlos were behind her. Leon hadn't expected to see Jill. Before he could say anything, she rushed over and hugged him tightly. Ada, who was standing nearby, opening a wooden box and preparing to load bombs, glanced up at the sound. She watched the embrace with a steady face, only her eyelids lowering fractionally. After a few seconds, Jill let go. "I didn't expect you to save Bard," she said, breathless. "He was infected trying to cover for me earlier. I don't know what to say, Leon. Thank you. Truly, thank you so much." Leon had heard a lot of thanks that day. Bard, recovered and grateful, hurried over to repeat his thanks and introduce himself. Leon waved them off. This was minor, he said. The real priority was getting the rest of Raccoon City safe. If they lingered, the police station would turn into some kind of shrine to him. "Jill, why are you here?" he asked, steering the conversation. "I came looking for you. If you want to save Raccoon City, I want to help," she answered. She seemed to have more to say. Her eyes were already speaking before her words could catch up. Before anything else could happen, Ada walked over. "Boss, when are we leaving?" she asked. "Boss?" Jill blinked. "Aren't you from another world? Is this person from your world too?" "No," Ada replied coolly. "I'm Ada Wong, a former federal agent, now serving the boss." She stood casually beside Leon as if they were close. Jill's expression tightened slightly. "I actually have many names," Ada added after a beat. "Ada Wong is just one of them." "What was your original name?" Leon asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Ada had always been mysterious in his previous life, her background a blank. "My old names aren't important anymore," she said. "When I met you, boss, I was called Ada, and I'll be Ada for now." Her answer hung in the air. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Ada. Marvin's surprise, Bard's contemplative look, Sherry's confusion, Jill's puzzled stare. Jarvis's voice came to Leon's ear as a quiet, high-frequency reminder. "Young master, Mr. Stark asked me to remind you to be wary of strangers who might try to trick you." Leon smacked his forehead lightly. "That Tony, he meddles even across worlds." "Tony?" Ada froze for a heartbeat, puzzled by the name's sudden appearance. Leon hurried to explain. Jill, overhearing, laughed. "That Tony must be pretty important to you. Does Miss Ada remind you of him?" she teased. Ada met Jill's eyes, and there was an unreadable look shared between them. The tension broke when Marvin cleared his throat and barked orders, reading the room perfectly. "Enough standing around. Let's move." 10 minutes later, everyone was armed, grouped into teams of 3, and heading out from the police station to distribute vaccines across the city. Leon stayed behind, not because he wanted to watch, but to handle a different task. To maximize efficiency, he would freeze the city's outer layer with his freezing breath, while Jarvis and the teams handled zombies and vaccination. Their job was simple in concept: give vaccine containers to survivors and use antiviral bombs on zombies. The antiviral bombs were scatter-type devices. When they detonated, they sprayed countless tiny needles carrying serum. Embedded in a zombie, those needles would inject serum that inactivated the virus, causing the creature to die. The vaccine itself was even simpler. Its container shattered, the contents evaporated and spread, and anyone exposed would begin producing antibodies. Leon took to the air with Sherry riding on his back. He flew along the city's outer edges, exhaling his freezing breath as he went. Gradually, the city's surfaces glazed over with ice and frost. The zombies on the streets froze solid. The rapid freezing formed internal ice shards that ruptured cells, leaving the frozen figures dead. The creatures still inside buildings were left for the ground teams to clear out. With the new vaccines and serums, operations went smoothly. Ordinary volunteers were slower than the professionals, but they made steady progress. 2 hours later, the teams returned to the police station. Leon had even visited the research institute for a full-body sterilization. When everyone reconvened in the main hall, excitement and relief were written across their faces. The Raccoon City rescue had succeeded. Their only regret was that the world consciousness hadn't offered any more gifts. It seemed unconcerned with saving a small city. "Leon, you saved this city." Marvin and Jill led the chorus of thanks. The station was packed. Survivors they'd picked up along the way filled the building, thousands cheering Leon's name until the dome seemed ready to burst. Leon wasn't comfortable being the center of attention. Like Tony giving a speech, he kept it short, calling the survivors the real heroes and urging calm and preparation. Half an hour later, with the survivors settled, Marvin, Jill, and the others gathered in the conference room. Leon got straight to the point. I plan to leave for a while and return to my world. Seeing their anxious faces, he raised his hands to calm them. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. I need to test the time flow between the worlds to make sure I don't stay away too long. I'll leave Jarvis here to help you, he continued. It's already collected evidence of Umbrella Corporation's crimes. When you're ready, you can release it to the wider network. Umbrella treated this place like a testing ground. The U.S. government might not react favorably. If anyone discovers the anomaly here, they could decide to erase this city to destroy the evidence. Prepare evacuation plans, just in case. Don't miss me too much. I'll be back. They wanted to say more. After just a few hours together, people can form unexpected bonds. Jill and Marvin looked reluctant to see him go. Ada's gaze was steady. Are you sure you'll come back? She asked. My salary hasn't been paid yet. Leon hugged her gently. Does this count as salary? It's not nearly enough. Ada's hand found his chest, and in a teasing gesture, her thumb traced along the muscle line. Nice body, big boy. Leon was speechless. He cleared his throat. Jarvis, assist everyone with logistics and engage in combat if necessary. He patted Sherry's head, told her to listen to Ada and Jill, then hugged those around him once more. Finally, he waved. I'm leaving. Goodbye, everyone. He closed his eyes and activated his traversal ability. In the chaos between worlds, the bubble for the Marvel Universe appeared automatically, followed by a mass of other bubbles obscured in a dark mist, the multiverse behind it. He selected his return and expended the energy to travel back. The moment passed and Leon was gone, another absence without fanfare, the kind of departure that leaves a hush. After the initial surprise, the room grew quiet. Marvin tried to lighten the mood. Honestly, I'm already starting to miss him. He was honest from start to finish, Jill said. It's lucky the world consciousness found someone like him. You know, our station was supposed to have a new recruit yesterday. Someone said, he's named Leon too, Leon S. Kennedy. Elliot laughed. Right, at first I thought Mr. Lion was that new recruit. Whatever happened to the new guy? He's a day late, another added. I hope he's safe and as good as Mr. Lion, someone we'd all cheer for. Chapter 71, Regression and Time Difference Marvel Universe. Stark Mansion, Los Angeles. Beep, beep, beep. The moment Leon appeared in the underground lab, all the instruments and lights flashed red and the alarms blared like a death knell. Data rolled over on its wheels, spraying disinfectant at him, while Ben raised a fire extinguisher, ready to go. That's enough. Stop! Am I a home invader for you to put on such a show? Leon waved his hands at Ben until the alarms and red lights finally died down. Young master, you're finally back. It seems your trip to the other world didn't go smoothly, Jarvis's calm voice reported. Finally. How long have I been gone? 10 years. Leon's heart skipped a beat. If it had been 10 years, the snap might already have happened. It has been 12 hours and 37 minutes since you left. It is now 7:49 a.m. the following morning, Jarvis said. 12 hours? Leon raised an eyebrow. You say finally after only 12 hours? Jarvis, you really need to reload your word selection logic. Sir, I chose that word based on Mr. Stark's mental state since your departure, Jarvis replied. So Tony missed me a lot? Leon couldn't help laughing. I believe so. 3 hours ago, he was asking, on average, every 7 minutes whether you had returned. And the last 3 hours? Leon teased. Was it once a minute? Sir fell asleep 3 hours ago. He has been roused by the alarm and is on his way down. You just insulted me. Tony's head popped around the stairs, wrapped in a white scarf, clearly having rushed out of bed. Look who decided to come home. Did you go suffer a grievance out there and come back to complain? When Tony saw Leon, his excited expression immediately melted into exhausted laziness. He wobbled over and flopped into a chair. I was just worried the old man around here would get lonely. Leon found it amusing. I didn't expect you, Tony, to be so dependent. 12 hours and you're already calling my name in your sleep. How could I not rush back? Calling your name in my sleep? You're joking. Tony laughed, then stopped. Jarvis told you? What do you think? Shit. Tony slapped his forehead. Watch your language, Mr. Stark. Leon sat on the table beside him. Sir, I did not tell young Master Leon that you called his name 17 times in your dreams over the past 3 hours, Jarvis reported. Tony slapped himself again. Great. There you go. Apologies, sir. Tony rotated his neck helplessly and looked at Leon. So it was rough over there? Why do you say that? Leon asked. Jarvis had said something similar earlier. Tony spread his hands and looked around theatrically. It's obvious. Your Mark-Eye is gone, and the Jarvis subsystem that was inside it is gone too. That made sense. Leon had left wearing the suit, but came back without it. Something had happened. Oh, so that's what you mean. I left the armor there on purpose. The situation in that world is complicated, Leon said, and briefly explained the transit and what he'd encountered in the Resident Evil-type world, skipping the parts about his more sensitive experiments. Tony stroked his chin. World consciousness and a virus. Very interesting. Did you spend 12 hours there too? Tony asked. That's right, Leon nodded. So you're saying the two worlds had the same time flow? Tony grinned. That's what you think? Leon admitted he'd assumed the time flow matched, a notion colored by the novels he'd read. Tony clapped his hands. There's the problem. He grabbed an empty box and a pencil and pushed the pencil through it. Think of this box as the barrier between two universes and this pencil as you passing through. The left side is a larger space. The right side is smaller. If the left has more mass and the right less, do the clocks tick the same? Leon frowned. No, unless the masses are equal. Exactly. Tony put the box down and snapped his fingers. The odds of their masses matching exactly are vanishingly small. So why would the time flow be identical, unless you forced it to be? He pointed at Leon. Your crossing very likely involved cutting into the timeline when you returned. The universe doesn't stop and wait for you. When you come back, you splice into a particular moment. It could be the instant you left or some later time. And which moment you land on is determined by you. Different return points might also cost you different amounts of energy. You need to experiment, he added, as if delivering a lecture to a younger brother, patting Leon's shoulder with pride. Thinking is good, but thinking plus more thinking is better. Leon sighed, half amused, half resigned. You win this round. Tony beamed, humming to himself. Enjoy your little victory. I'm going to try crossing over again. Leon let him relish the moment. Then Tony suddenly stood up, the scarf slipping off. This time you're bringing me, right? It's only 1% more energy. One extra person won't matter. It's dangerous. Don't get infected the moment you step over, Leon began, then stopped. He noticed a triangular glow at Tony's chest. You put the arc reactor back on? You synthesized the new element? Tony grinned proudly. 2 hours after you left. I call it bedacium. Leon couldn't help a grin. How should I say this? It's pretty badass. If Dad heard you name a new element that, he'd probably crawl out of his grave and punch you, Tony said. Sorry, the old man's been cremated. He can't crawl out, Tony added with his usual dark humor. So are you going to let me come or not? I need to think. By the way, who was it that said I don't think enough? Leon asked. Who? Who would dare to say that about you? What a nerve, Tony said, pretending to look left and right. Chapter 72. Desperate Virus. Leon finally agreed to Tony's request to accompany him. After all, the biochemical crisis world posed little danger to the two brothers. Even if they accidentally contracted a virus, there were vaccines and serums developed as backups. Besides, it would be a vacation with Tony. The last family trip he remembered was when he graduated from junior high. Tony, Pepper, and he had gone to Dubai. It was meant to be a simple trip, but it turned into a 3-day party in a villa. Fresh out of junior high, he'd almost graduated again there. This trip to the biochemical crisis world would be his makeup for that high school graduation that never happened. Leon dialed Natasha from his bedroom. Tony still needed to install some recording equipment on his armor before departure to record the crossing over, so they had a few hours to spare. While waiting, Leon remembered a virus from an Iron Man movie. Extremis. Extremis could grant hosts extraordinary abilities, super regeneration, strength, speed, even the generation of fire or electricity. If they could get a sample, it might be useful as a reference for developing the S-virus. He called Natasha. What's the mission? She asked as soon as the call connected. Why so blunt? Can't I just check on the living conditions of my dear subordinate? Leon replied, feigning offense. It's not even 8 in the morning. I can't think of any reason the man who refused to pay me 4 days ago would call me besides assigning a mission, Natasha shot back. Leon didn't expect such a sharp retort. Fine, there is a mission. I'm in an office building in New York. It's secure here, Natasha said. Do we have any widows undercover at Pioneer Technologies? I need a virus they're researching, extremists. There was a short pause as Natasha checked her records. Tracy, a widow, used to work there as a mid-level researcher, she answered. You can pick up the reagent in Tennessee in 3 hours, or I can have it in Los Angeles by 2 p.m. Natasha's efficiency was infuriating. I'll go pick it up, faster that way. He couldn't help a soft chuckle. I have to say, the sisters are amazing. Then make some time to drink with them. They've been missing you, she said. Okay, I'm hanging up. Natasha cut the call. Leon tossed his phone on the table, pouting. A subordinate daring to talk back to their superior. How rude. 3 hours later, he stood at the former Red Room safe house in Tennessee. Natasha led him into what looked like a rustic 2-story cabin in the woods. From the outside, it could have fit a family of 5, but inside, down below, was another story entirely. The underground room opened into a modern base with 4 full levels carved beneath the cabin. Only a few widows were around, some he'd shared drinks with before. They greeted him warmly and returned to their work. Natasha brought him into the innermost command room, opened a safe, and pulled out a small vial and a USB drive. Tracy helped me steal this last night, she said. Are you going to use it for research? I looked over some research notes, Natasha added. It still has major problems. You've done well, Leon said, taking the reagent and examining it. I know, that's why I wanted it. You're researching regeneration? Natasha's eyes lit up. Can extremists cure physical defects? It can, but not in its current form. The side effects are severe. It's not directly usable. Leon tapped the vial, but I'm confident I can fix it, quickly. Then I'll wait, Natasha said, sliding an arm through his and leaning close. So this hands-off, boss? Do I get paid today? Here? Leon glanced around the command room. There was one desk. Natasha smiled and sat on it, legs crossed. Right here, right now, she purred. An hour and a half later, Leon helped straighten Natasha's clothes. She was slumped in the chair, still a little dizzy. If you're bad at it, you shouldn't be so addictive, he teased, pinching her cheek. Be gentler, she muttered, rolling her eyes. I've been accommodating your needs the whole time, hardly subtle, he said, brushing the dust from her battle-scarred jacket. Salaries paid. I'm off. Keep working on liberating the other widows. Be careful and contact me if anything happens. Leon, Natasha called as he started toward the door. Do you know Pioneer Technologies is kidnapping beggars for human experimentation? He paused. They're doing that already? You want us to do something about it? If you agree, in 2 days Stark can claim them as his property, she said. Excellent. Of course I'll help, but be careful, and if anything goes wrong, call me. He grinned. Got it, she smiled back. Now go. Leon left without a trace, though not without the extremist vial and the USB drive. By 1 p.m., he was back in the Stark mansion's underground room. Tony stood there in armor, hands on his hips, looking like a kid who'd been denied a toy. Where did you disappear to? I couldn't find you anywhere in the house, and Jarvis couldn't track you either. He sounded half exasperated, half amused. Tony had been buzzing about crossing worlds and had modified his armor at top speed. Leon's absence at the last minute had left him frantic. I asked Natasha to get a sample of the extremist virus, Leon said, holding up the metal case. It might help with our research on the other side. Extremists? Tony leaned closer, curiosity overriding his annoyance. Isn't that from Killian's work? Leon gave a brief rundown of the virus's origins. Sounds useful, though stable injection seems unlikely, Tony said, nodding. But who is Killian? Did I know him? Don't get distracted by irrelevant people now. Let's just cross over, Tony snapped, impatient. All right. Leon placed a hand on Tony's armored shoulder and enveloped him in his biofield. He closed his eyes and let his consciousness sink into the dark, searching space between worlds. Chapter 73. World Changes. The space was no longer empty. A chaotic bubble had taken up permanent residence there. The moment Leon's consciousness brushed it, he knew what it was, the biochemical crisis world. It was permanently open to him now, unconditional access. But when he tried to return to the moment he'd left the Resident Evil world, the energy feedback for his travel ability spiked to 30% of his stamina, 30 times more than his first trip. He tried pushing the target time forward, testing the limits. For each day he pushed it back, the required stamina dropped by 1%. That decline continued until he reached the 30th day after he'd left. At that point, the requirement fell back to the original 1%. Pushing further, to the 31st, 32nd day and beyond, made no difference. The cost stayed at 1%. Tony had been right. Traveling backward in time within a world demanded far more energy. Traveling forward did not change energy consumption. More precisely, Leon realized he could not select dates earlier than the moment he'd first appeared in that world. He could not jump back to the night of September 28th or any earlier time before his arrival. He could only choose times from his arrival onward. He experimented further. Tagging Tony as a life to take along instantly pushed the cost to 11%. Marking the entire Stark Villa as something to bring didn't raise it further, still around 11%. Carrying living beings consumed enormous energy, hauling matter barely registered. Satisfied he roughly understood the mechanics, Leon stopped probing. "Get ready. It's about to start," he told Tony. "Already ready. Hurry. Can't wait to try cheeseburgers from another world." Tony yelled, giddy. Leon confirmed a jump to 30 days after he'd left the Resident Evil world. In the next instant, the two of them were gone. Resident Evil world, October 29th. A tropical rainforest. Two figures who didn't belong there materialized amid a startled flock of birds. Leon opened his eyes and glanced at Tony, encased in armor beside him. Using his supervision, he confirmed the suit only hid Tony's compromised body, still in its original kidney-deficient state, which was a small relief. A few seconds later, the iron armor shuddered, the faceplate lit, and Tony woke up. He blinked at the unfamiliar woods and wetlands and then called instinctively, "Leon." "Awake? You need to work on your physical conditioning. I've been waiting forever," Leon teased. "Has it been that long? It feels like I just slept." Tony patted his helmet with an absent, baffled air. "Where are we?" "Amazon. Oh, my recorder." Tony slapped himself fully awake. "Jarvis, did the recorder pick up the travel, especially that void Leon said he couldn't open his eyes in?" "I didn't feel anything, just like I slept and woke up here," Tony said irritably. Jarvis answered, "Sir, in the garage all of the armor circuits disconnected for unknown reasons during the travel. The instruments did not operate normally." "How could that happen? So we didn't record anything?" Tony looked flabbergasted. "It appears the armor's systems were intentionally disabled at the start of the travel," Leon said. "Same thing happened to me last time. I suspect it's a protective mechanism. There's simply too much information outside a world for a human brain to process. One glance could cause neural failure," Jarvis said. "Sleeping during the travel may actually be a form of protection." Tony shook his head. "Maybe. So where the hell are we?" Leon closed his eyes and tuned into the sounds of the world. Explosions, screams, shouting, cries, roars, and wails poured into his mind in a torrent of negative data. He had fixed the Raccoon City crisis before he left. He'd set everything in order and left Jarvis behind. Why did this place sound as if the world had fallen into an abyss? The sight of the planet confirmed it. Smoke choked the horizon almost everywhere. Gunfire and artillery roared. People were crying and dying. Something terrible had happened in these 30 days. As he watched, an invisible fluctuation descended. Leon reached for it with his travel ability, connecting to the world consciousness. An onslaught of complex emotions, ecstasy, resentment, panic, relief, crashed into him. He stood still and sorted through the feelings. Leave. If out of control. Gift. Save. Gift. Save! The world consciousness was pleading for help. Leon realized it had acted while he was away, an action that had pushed the world to the brink of losing control. "Another gift? You want me to clean up your mess. What are you offering this time?" he wondered. He tried to bargain, to raise the price. Doubling his research capability would be ideal. But the world returned only helpless, apologetic emotion. The previous improvements were already at their highest standard. Frustrated, Leon cursed under his breath. The world's response grew timid, like a trembling child. "Then what else can you give me?" he demanded aloud. The ground around them lit up with scattered white-gold points of light that only Leon could see. They gathered into a larger luminous orb and drifted toward him, as if to merge with his body. He recognized the form, a gift. He didn't resist. But the instant the light touched him, his iron body rejected it. Leon froze. The world shot a rapid stream of images and feelings his way. The gift would have altered human physiology into a constitution perfectly adapted to all Resident Evil pathogen products, a pure, side-effect-free enhancement. But the armor's immune system, the iron body, had automatically expelled it. His mechanical augmented physiology treated the gift as something that would weaken him. "This is useless to me," Leon muttered, rubbing his temple. "Oh, right." He clapped once. "Give it to the person next to me. That's basically giving it to me, too." The world acquiesced. The light shifted and merged into Tony. The moment it hit him, Tony's faceplate popped open and he stared at Leon like he'd gone mad. "What are you doing? Neural synapses collapsing? An epileptic fit?" His voice was sharp. Then he registered the sensation. "Something just merged with me. Oh, it's like someone put a hot water bottle on me." Tony jumped to his feet, scratched at his chest, and pawed at his suit. He unzipped, stepped out of the armor, and lifted his shirt to inspect himself like someone who'd suddenly gone insane. "You look like you're the one losing it," Leon said. "I was just communicating with the world consciousness. It modified your body." "This warm feeling everywhere is a modification? Did it make me a Kryptonian?" Tony gaped. Leon explained, "No, it lets you freely absorb and integrate various native biological factors from this world. They can all merge perfectly into your body." Tony made a face. "So I get Frankensteined. It's a gift from the world consciousness. Better to have it than not, be grateful," Leon said with a shrug. More emotions flooded him from the world. Save, evolve. More. It was still begging for aid and evolution. "We need to assess the situation," Leon said, rising into the air to get a look at the terrain. Tony pulled his armor back on and took off after him. As they floated side by side, a different Jarvis voice came out of Tony's Mark IV suit, unusually upbeat. "Young Master Leon, you're finally back." "Jarvis? Did you connect to the Super Mark I subsystem?" Leon asked. "Young Master Leon, many events occurred while you were away. It would be difficult to explain them all at once," Jarvis replied. "Keep it short, just the main points." Leon motioned for Tony to land. Chapter 74, Destroy the World in 30 Days. After they landed, Tony took off his armor and let Jarvis run freely. "The story starts after young Master Leon left," Jarvis said. "On the morning of September 29th, after you departed, Jill Valentine and Sheriff Marvin led the Raccoon City Police in a citywide sweep for survivors. By evening, the city had been cleared, and over 90% of the zombies had been eliminated. But as you warned, Umbrella noticed the anomaly in the city. They airdropped 6 tyrants into Raccoon City. Fortunately, everyone managed to take them down with serum bombs. Fearing a heavier assault, Sheriff Marvin decided to evacuate everyone that very night. Tens of thousands of people left in a massive convoy. Even the military at the checkpoints outside the city didn't stop them. Once the city was empty, most factions lost interest. A few special teams were sent in and found nothing, and Raccoon City quietly faded from public attention. A day later, those who hadn't heard from you dispersed temporarily. Jill and Marvin were abruptly reassigned to the New York Police Department. Sherry and Mr. Bard left with Ada Wong. Other survivors received official resettlement, though the compensation was poor. But then, Ada Wong came under attack from the HCF for refusing to hand over the G-Virus. She asked me to take Sherry and Bard and hide with her in rural Canada. From there, I connected to the internet and exposed Umbrella's crimes to the world. As Jarvis spoke, he projected footage taken by the armor, complete with captions and images. Tony couldn't help making an offhand comment about Leon's taste in women. Leon frowned. So things went well, with a few twists. What happened next? Jarvis continued. The change came the morning of October 1st. A Resident Evil outbreak occurred in New York City and spread rapidly worldwide. But when Ada infiltrated Umbrella and connected me to their internal network, we discovered the real cause. The global crisis seemed to originate in New York, but its root actually lay in Raccoon City. It began the morning of September 30th, when Marvin, Jill, and the others evacuated survivors. An Umbrella operative who had been mixed in with the evacuees stayed behind, a man named Hank. He slipped into the underground lab to recover the G virus, but Mr. Bard had already destroyed the virus samples and vaccines. Hank left the lab empty-handed. As he exited, he was bitten by a rat that had crawled out of the sewer. That rat had, less than half a day earlier, after we destroyed the lab, visited the ruins of the lab. It was infected with an S-virus prototype. Jarvis played surveillance footage. A rat burrowed into the collapsed lab and then scuttled out. The timestamp read 11 a.m. on September 29th, less than an hour after Leon left the biochemical crisis world. Hank didn't think much of the bite, Jarvis narrated. He killed the rat and went straight from Raccoon City to New York. He arrived the evening of September 30th. By October 1st, he showed up at Umbrella's New York branch in extremely poor condition. The footage showed Hank in combat fatigues, stumbling into an office building. The video sped up. 10 minutes later, screams echoed and people poured out in panic. Explosions rocked the building. A 3-meter-tall behemoth blasted out through the flames, covered in blood and roaring at the sky. Umbrella's guns and cannons didn't kill it. They only caused it to mutate further. Those splattered with its blood began to mutate as well. The footage jumped 2 hours ahead. In front of the Umbrella building, there was already a dense horde of zombies, discarded heavy weapons strewn about. The monster Hank had become still stood among them, its eyes blood red. Hank mutated inside the Umbrella building and rapidly infected everyone he touched, Jarvis said. Our calculations show an infected person had over a 98% chance of turning into a zombie. Those infected who didn't turn immediately fell into comas and were quickly devoured. The crisis rolled through New York. Local survival rates fell below 1,000th. Jill and Marvin, just arriving at the NYPD, barely escaped that afternoon with my remote assistance. Jarvis switched footage to New York engulfed in flames. That was only the beginning. Once New York reached the point of no return, the military used high-yield weapons. But each zombie's physical abilities had more than doubled. For every 100 zombies, one Hank-like monstrosity would be born. These monsters were astonishingly resilient. Some could survive a 125mm tank shell and keep fighting. To kill them required carpet bombing. The scale, however, was overwhelming. Among New York's millions of zombies, there were tens of thousands of such monsters, and the numbers kept rising because ordinary people who smelled their blood became rapidly infected and assimilated. Finally, when the situation spiraled out of control, the Eagle faction used nuclear weapons. Tony's eyes widened. Nuclear weapons? That's right, Jarvis said. At 7:30 p.m. on October 1st, 3 nuclear bombs detonated over New York. That night marked the prelude to global chaos. Umbrella, however, used what it could salvage. They extracted virus samples from zombie tissue and experimented. They discovered that while one supermonster appeared per 100 zombies, among every 100 infected people, one survivor would wake who retained their sanity and didn't turn. Those survivors initially fell into comas, but when they recovered, they were not ordinary humans. Because the virus integrated perfectly, they gained immune physiologies, massively increased strength, agility, and awareness. A trader named Albert Wesker returned to Umbrella at that time and volunteered for the experiments. After injecting the virus and surviving, his strength reached 20 tons and his speed reached 150 meters per second. Umbrella called the virus extracted from these zombies the God Ascension virus. Wesker, strengthened, took control of Umbrella and launched a human evolution program, spreading the God Ascension virus worldwide. Umbrella had branches in almost every country. Even under warrants, they could release the virus. So on October 8th, European time, the airborne God Ascension virus spread across most of the world overnight. Within hours, capitals fell. 5 days later, White Bear Country abandoned its eastern borders and evacuated survivors to Siberia, creating a temporary capital on the permafrost. Most cities in John Bull and the Gallic Rooster collapsed. Command posts moved to air defense bases. The problem wasn't the zombies' strength, as much as the virus's infectious efficiency and the nation's disorganized responses. By October 14th, the only country largely intact was Rabbit Country, due to strict controls and strong mobilization. Their soldiers wore protective suits and held the southwestern and northern borders, blocking the virus. On October 15th, more superhumans, those who survived infection without turning, were identified. Their emergence changed how nations could resist the zombies. On October 16th, the entire U.S. fell into crisis and the economy ground to a halt. Texas declared independence that day. The military strikes on New York had destroyed national morale, and groups of superhumans seized power amid the chaos and formed new governments. On October 17, 16 states, including Florida and Louisiana, declared independence. Jill, Marvin, and others, while moving between states, got trapped in a small Missouri town. When I received their distress signal, I intervened and cleared the surrounding zombies. On October 18th, with my help, Jill and the others returned to Raccoon City in Colorado. At Ada Wong's request, I went to Canada and brought Bard and the others back to Raccoon City. Everyone reunited. On October 19th, Ada released her findings publicly. The God Ascension virus was actually the S-virus prototype you'd researched, young Master Leon. That day, Jill asked me for the original viral solution and injected herself out in the wilderness. She survived, and, because she used the original solution, became stronger than the ordinary superhumans, surpassing 30 tons of strength and running faster than 200 meters per second. On October 23rd, Colorado, led by Jill, declared independence with its capital in Raccoon City. By then, most southern U.S. states had declared independence. Only 7 northern states still supported the old government. On October 27th, a faction called Family seized power from the old U.S. government and dropped 1 nuclear bomb each on the already fallen Moscow and London, claiming it was to clear zombies and save humanity. On October 28th, White Bear Country detonated a nuclear device on Washington for the same reason. The old U.S. government failed to intercept it. This morning, October 29th, the old government announced it would launch a nuclear strike on White Bear Country's temporary capital. White Bear Country retaliated by declaring it would launch nuclear strikes on the capitals of the independent U.S. states. In 5 hours, dozens of nuclear bombs are scheduled to fall simultaneously. Jarvis's report ended. Tony sat shaking, speechless, his gaze fixed on Leon, stunned. "This is the virus you developed?" His pupils were huge. "You were here for only 12 hours, and you almost destroyed a world?" Leon's face went dark. "I developed the virus, but I destroyed it. I wiped out every container, blew up the lab, and even used X-ray vision to make sure nothing living remained in the area." "Not even a spider," Tony breathed. "And where did that rat come from? How does it happen that after it got infected, it bit no one else, but precisely infected Hank, who then carried it to New York? This whole chain of events. This is the world consciousness playing tricks," Leon muttered. "It freaked itself out, and now it wants me to clean up its mess." He replayed the emotional fragments the world consciousness had shared earlier and finally understood the pattern. Leave, evolve, out of control, gift, save, gift, save. Leave referred to his departure. Evolve meant the world consciousness wanted to promote evolution, but it only had rudimentary emotions and no logic. It assumed he wouldn't return after leaving, so to continue promoting evolution, it sent a rat into the lab to inhale whatever trace virus remained. The S-virus prototype could survive for 6 hours after dispersion. Leon estimated that when he destroyed the containers, some of the virus had volatilized, leaving only a few stray particles, insufficient to harm a person passing through. But the rat inhaled all of those particles. The virus multiplied wildly in its body. The rat then ran out of the lab and, by fate, met Hank. The world consciousness had effectively dug its own grave. "I didn't expect the world consciousness to be so radical," Leon said, rubbing his forehead. "Forget it. Let's go to Raccoon City first, and we'll decide what to do there." Jarvis's subsystem had already warned Jill and the others in advance. By the time Mr. Lion and Tony flew back to Raccoon City, their old acquaintances were waiting outside the city gates. Raccoon City was unrecognizable. Steel walls crowned with electric coils and iron spikes encircled the town. Thick coal smoke hung over everything, sour and choking. The moment Mr. Lion's craft touched down, Sherry broke free of the crowd. Big Brother Lion, the little girl, eyes wet, flung herself at him and clung on. "I was so scared you wouldn't come back, but Ada said you wouldn't abandon us, and you finally came back." Sorry. Mr. Lion mussed her hair. I was gone too long. I promise, next time I leave, I'll take you with me. Jill and Ada Wong arrived on the other side. Talking about leaving right after coming back. Jill teased. Boss, why don't you just get rid of that world consciousness while you're at it? Ada wore a trench coat. A bandage still crossed her face. Even a little ragged, she kept her composure. Mr. Lion, welcome back. I never expected the world consciousness to cause so much trouble. It's hard to put into words. Jill's face was more complicated. She'd swapped the softer lines of before for a combat uniform and a harder resolve, a woman sharpened by recent trials. Her experiences had turned her into a capable leader. You really think the world's beyond saving? There's nothing we can do? Jill hesitated, wanting to ask for help, but not sure how to start. Director Bard stepped forward with a forced smile. Sigh, don't talk like that, Mr. Lion. I never imagined the world would be like this when we met again, but seeing you still so full of spirit makes me happy. Jarvis had already told them everything. Everyone present felt the future was bleak, but they were grateful to the man who had returned like sunlight. Mr. Lion surveyed the faces. Marvin, Bard, Elliot. No familiar person was missing. Clearly, over the last month, the world consciousness had intervened on their behalf. Otherwise, how could people who were cannon fodder in the original timeline have survived a worse global disaster? Saving a world is no trouble at all. He opened his arms and embraced them. Don't look so down, I promise. Children will still have desks in peaceful classrooms, and the world will still have bright sunshine. He didn't mention the little voice in the back of his head, the trade the world consciousness had offered. It had descended suddenly and put forward a price he couldn't refuse, half of the world's controlling authority and the ability of genetic self-locking. The first had been something he'd never encountered. It sounded far-reaching. The second, the genetic self-locking, was tailor-made. It let him actively control the stability of his own genes. He could make his Kryptonian bloodline research far more manageable. More importantly, he could seal his genes against leakage. When his blood or hair left his body, they would automatically lose any genetic information he didn't want to leak. For him, that was as valuable as any boost in strength. He didn't particularly like the idea of cleaning up after a capricious world consciousness, but it had dangled too much to refuse. And rewards like that were conditional, only granted if he saved the world and advanced biological evolution. The world consciousness never gave based on his desires, only based on what it could offer. Come inside and we'll talk. Mr. Lion led them toward the police department. Oh, and this is my older brother, Tony Stark. He came along to see things for himself. Only then did everyone notice the hulking figure in gold and red armor beside him. It wasn't another Jarvis at all, but Tony himself buried in power plating. So you're Mr. Lion's older brother. It's an honor. A cluster of people gushed. Your younger brother is incredible. You must be an excellent man as well. A crowd swarmed Tony with praise for Mr. Lion. Tony's mouth twitched. He hated being overshadowed. They had it backwards. He wanted them to marvel at his genius and at how his brother was brilliant because of him. He made a mental note to give the locals a little display of genius later. The Raccoon City Police Department had become the seat of the new Colorado Republic government. Jill worked there every day and would leave from there to hunt down zombies. In the conference room, Director Bard, who also headed the National Virus Research Center, Marvin, the Director of National Security, and others clustered around the table. Mr. Lion stood at the head, feeling a little surreal. It had only been hours for him, but the junior officers and assistant directors he'd known had become national figures overnight. The new country had only a few 100,000 people, most still confined to Raccoon City, and the rapid political reshuffle across what had been Eagle Country's territory made everything feel unsettled. The most pressing issue is the nuclear missile White Bear Country is preparing to launch, Bard said flatly. We have no way to intercept it. Jill added, meanwhile, the number of zombies migrating from other territories keeps rising. Our defensive pressure is only increasing. Especially the super zombies, Marvin said. Besides you and that iron armor, there's no one here who can stand against them. Former interstate communications had dissolved into negotiations between dozens of newly formed nations, In what used to be Eagle Country's lands, there were now over 40 states, each with its own government. It was chaos. How do we proceed? Jill looked to Mr. Lion. He took in the situation and made a decision. It's simple. I'll destroy the missile and then go deal with the super zombies. Only great power can perform miracles, he declared. I'll have these problems solved by tonight. But he knew the deeper problem. Ordinary zombies were the real long-term threat. Even if a counter serum could be developed, it would be a drawn-out fight. In places like India, nearly 80% of the ordinary population had been killed or turned. If those near 1 billion zombies had any organization or intelligence, they would have already spread worldwide. On top of humans, the infection had jumped to birds, rats, and insects. Zombie animals were everywhere. There's only one way to turn the tide, Mr. Lion said, leaning on the table. We research a new S-virus, one that turns every ordinary person into a superhuman. The meeting ended. Jill stayed behind in the former director's office to handle paperwork. Marvin and the others accompanied Leon on a tour of the city before heading down to the underground research facility. They had already opened a skylight above the site and installed a new elevator that led straight to the entrance. Everyone wrote it down. I don't think we'll be eating hamburgers in this world, Tony muttered to Leon, his tone half complaint, half observation. The virus has sent this place back to the Dark Ages, streets full of sleeping people, and there's this constant smell of filth. Do you regret coming? Leon asked softly. Regret? Tony blinked, as if Leon were joking. What does that word mean? I don't know it. His eyes went serious. Since I'm here, I have to do something for this world. Consider it penance for your sins. Don't pin this on me, Leon said. I didn't know the world consciousness would be this extreme. That was a joke, Tony said, then narrowed his gaze. But I really do want to help. Remember, I'm Iron Man. All right, Iron Man, what are you thinking? Research new suits? Research your S-virus prototype. Are you kidding? Your fields are energy, materials, and mechanics. Am I the joking type? Okay, I'll fire a few Resident Evil questions at you. Leon rattled off several advanced bio questions he had thought of. Tony answered them flawlessly. Leon stared. You actually answered all of them. When did you sneak off and get a PhD in biology? How come I didn't know? Tony shrugged. I studied for a few days after you said you wanted to research Kryptonian genes. Only a few days? Then you really are a genius. Think you're the only fast learner? Tony said with a smirk. Speed is just the foundation of being a genius, kid. Leon realized that Tony's comprehension was almost as rapid as his own. Thanos had not been wrong. The man was cursed with knowledge. When the elevator reached the lab, Tony practically dragged Leon inside. Tony's grasp of the S-virus research was breathtakingly fast. Often before Leon finished a sentence, Tony had already extrapolated 3 steps ahead. For the first time, Leon felt that lightning comprehension mirrored in someone else. They discussed and experimented in tandem. One idea always triggered another. Their inspirations fed each other like 2 feet stepping in rhythm, pushing the work forward in a constant upward spiral. Director Bard and his assistants, acting as aides, watched wide-eyed and bewildered. There were 2 such abnormal minds in this world, and they worked together. Half an hour later, they produced a tube of orange reagent. S-virus prototype vaccine, Leon announced, generates antibodies that block airborne infection, but it also eliminates the enhancing effects of the S prototype. Tony stroked his chin. Good for now. Someone, take that and test it on mice. Leon held a vial of golden reagent. S1 virus modification successful. Mutation probability after infection reduced by 70%, and the enhancing effect remains intact, but it's still far from the final goal. He opened the briefcase he'd brought, took out an Extremis sample and a USB drive. Tony, try fusing Extremis with S1. Leon shrugged off his white lab coat. Further improvements need additional reference materials. I'm going to find some, and while I'm at it, destroy a few nuclear bombs. You'd better hurry, Tony said, eyes fixed on the bottle of golden virus. I'm afraid that in a few hours someone could have a perfect S-virus sitting on this table. Tony's expression was a mixture of scientific hunger and excitement. He clearly recognized this virus as a ladder of biological evolution. He believed this trip had already been worth it, and the idea that he and Leon, as brothers of invention, might steer an entire world's evolution thrilled him. Leon didn't worry about Tony getting infected. With his peculiar physiology, Tony couldn't become a zombie. The most infectious agents in this world would only make him stronger. Leon left the underground facility and shot into the sky. He accelerated until, 5 seconds later, he broke through the exosphere and hung in the void. His coat sleeves fluttered in the vacuum, and his supervision swept the earth, locking onto super zombies across the surface. Judgment came down. 2 columns of heat, like divine spears, descended from space. To that Earth's inhabitants, they were the deadliest space weapons imaginable. Super zombies wandering aimlessly on the ground were suddenly enveloped by searing heat. Trillions of infected cells screamed as they were torn down to their most primitive molecules. The red pillars plowed through the terrain, splitting the land and boiling the seas. In the Indian subcontinent, millions of super zombies howled at the sky as if to challenge heaven. In an instant, they were ash within the light. The beams swept from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, then through South Asia into Africa, carving a deep gorge beside the East African Rift. Wherever they passed, clouds tore apart and waters roiled, as if Moses' staff had been raised and the sea had been parted. When the first pass of the beams subsided, the world felt the shock of something godlike. Evildoers felt their hearts drop into an abyss. The refugees and the suffering fell to their knees. In that moment, many believed there was a god. But Leon was not finished. He spent the next 20 minutes incinerating tens of millions more super zombies. Then he turned to a grimmer task: nuclear bombs. He twisted his body and plunged into the earth. No nation had intentionally armored its warheads to stop a being like Leon. With a glance, his vision revealed the locations of nuclear storage sites across the planet. He passed through mountains and dove beneath oceans. Even bases designed to withstand nuclear blasts offered no real defense. Minutes later, with his biofield, Leon enveloped tens of thousands of nuclear warheads, American stockpiles, and white bear deposits, and pushed them all into space. He continued until he was hundreds of thousands of kilometers above the exosphere. Then, from that distance, he used his heat rays to destroy every warhead. Under extreme heat and pressure, they fused and detonated in brilliant fireworks across the void. Invisible ionizing radiation and electromagnetic pulses rippled outward. Countless satellites turned and witnessed the spectacle. Leon stood with his back to the earth, his silhouette flickering in the light of 1,000 artificial suns. He did not hide his face with the biofield. Half of it was lit by the nuclear fires, the other half bathed in sunlight. Every screen on the planet captured that image. The face, chiseled, hard as if sculpted by blade and hammer, seared itself into the minds of millions watching the sky. Chapter 77. Collect experimental materials and have fun, Raccoon City. Ada Wong, Jill, and the others watched Leon's figure on the screens. He actually destroyed all the nuclear warheads belonging to both the Eagle and Bear factions. Even Ada, usually so composed, felt a quick thrill of excitement. Jill stared at the footage with a wry smile. I thought getting powered up had closed the gap between us, but I never imagined he was this strong. Leon, you're amazing. Sherry cheered, throwing up her hands. He saved us again. Marvin and a subordinate exchanged a look and spread their hands. See, that's why we all call you Kennedy, not just Leon. Leon S. Kennedy shook his head helplessly. Maybe I should pick a nickname. Sharing a name with that man, honestly, the pressure's ridiculous. At the Research Institute, everyone who had seen the nuclear explosions cheered. Tony only glanced at the feeds and went back to his work. He knew Leon's capabilities better than anyone here. Next on Leon's list, the Plaga parasite and the E-mold. He plunged back toward Earth. His figure vanished from satellite view as he fell like a meteor, friction igniting a trail of fire around him. He slammed into a village in Spain's Faranfang Valley with a thunderous impact. Dozens of houses were scattered by the shockwave, the ground cracking in a spiderweb. When the dust settled, Leon rose from the 10-meter-deep crater and flew toward a medieval castle deeper in the valley. He paused for a heartbeat to admire the classical, imposing keep, then kicked its exterior and made the whole stone complex crumble like sand. People poked stunned faces out of the rubble, unharmed thanks to his control. "Who is Sadler?" Leon asked, his gaze fixed on a hooded figure at the back of the crowd holding a scepter. Osmond Sadler, head of the Los Illuminados cult, had tried to control the world with the Plaga parasite. All eyes in the ruins swung to him. The man's face was hidden in shadow, but he looked like he was plotting. Then, with a thud, he dropped to his knees. "My lord, I am Sadler." Leon strode over. "Hand over the Master Plaga." "But the Master Plaga is gone right now, my lord. Please give me time." Sadler trembled. "Gone? Isn't one right here?" Leon asked. He stomped on Sadler's head, crushed it, and incinerated the body with a heat beam. Seconds later, a parasite crawled out. "I hate liars," Leon said, and put the parasite away. "Destroy all parasites within 3 days, or you will be destroyed." Dust roiled as he vanished silently, leaving a stunned, kneeling crowd behind. Minutes later, Leon reappeared over a Romanian village. Moving at extreme speed and wrapped in his biofield, he seemed to teleport. The layout was familiar, a ring of village houses outside, castles clustered inside. He hovered over the central castle, observed for a week to pinpoint the mold, then plunged in. The mountain yielded like tofu beneath him, and he entered a cavern where a massive fungal aggregate pulsed, the mold. It resembled an infant in shape, pale pink breathing. He could almost hear the rhythm of billions of hyphae transporting life through it. "This is the third evolutionary key from Resident Evil. The mold," Leon muttered. He produced a syringe, plunged it into the fungal mass, and drew out a full vial of hyphae. Then his eyes flashed heat beams, and the mold turned to ash in a few breaths. "Ah! Who destroyed the mold?" A piercing howl cut from outside the cave, sudden and outraged as if someone had yanked a net cable from a streamer. Leon wasn't bothered. He punched open the cave's dome, shot into the sky, and continued to eradicate hyphae across the area. "How dare you! Stop this right now!" The woman who'd been howling advanced fast. Miranda, one of the earliest infected by the E-mold and the locus of this territory, led a dense crowd behind her, men and women, some still human, some monstrous. They were all infected with the E-mold. Leon's mission was to remove the E-mold. In the game's lore, it could evolve into another world-ending threat. Since he was already here, he decided to neutralize the danger for good, a task the world consciousness had hinted at. He ascended and, drawing on everything he had, unleashed a freezing breath. Seconds later, the entire village, a block of houses, people, even the lake, became a single enormous cube of clear ice. Every feature was preserved, frozen mid-motion. Miranda's monstrous snarl was trapped within the crystal. "I remember this woman lived for over 100 years, right? The E-mold really is unique," he said. He flew to the edge of the ice block, pushed, and lifted the colossal frozen mass, over 3 kilometers across and more than 200 meters high, and carried it into space. Satellites worldwide captured the image. On the screens, everyone watched, baffled and awed. Where had he found that enormous block of ice with houses, people, and trees in it? Was it magic? Up there, Leon smashed the ice with a single punch. Tiny ice crystals, no larger than a millimeter, flew apart like silvery fireworks across the night. Viewers couldn't help murmuring at the cosmic beauty. By the time they looked back for the shadowy figure, he had already vanished. Back at the police station, Leon returned to a warm welcome. Jill led the chorus of thanks, saluting through tears before sweeping him into an embrace. The hall filled with applause, cheers, and relieved sobs. Confetti cannons popped, paper scraps cascading like rain. Someone sprayed champagne. Leon, half amused, tapped a cork free with his thumb, and the wine sprayed in a triumphant fountain. They had all seen it. The heat beam that cut through super zombies, the destruction of nuclear bombs. Today was perhaps the happiest day they'd had in a month. Men and women pressed close, eager to plant a big kiss on the cheek of their savior, or just to bask in his presence. With Leon there, problems that had seemed unsolvable were resolved in half an hour. The end of the world had looked like a noisy children's game in front of him. To them, Leon had become a symbol of the future. They hoisted him up and tossed him in the air with broad grins like proud grooms at a wedding. Women ushered him to the podium, hoping he'd say a few words, just one sentence to treasure. Leon wasn't fond of these scenes. They reminded him of the countless receptions he'd attended as a kid, always an observer clinging to Tony's side. But the expectant faces made it clear he should say something. He cleared his throat, scanned the suddenly quiet hall, thought for a moment, and then began to sing the International in Chinese. His voice was quiet at first, then people joined in, some in English, some in Russian. When the song ended, some cheered raucously, others wept. They surged toward the podium again, desperate to embrace him. The celebration rolled on into night. Eventually, Tony arrived back at the station with a group of researchers. He threw himself into the festivities, dancing with partners, drinking Bordeaux, reveling with beautiful women around him. The happiness that had been absent for a month fell over them all at once, sudden and complete. Chapter 78: SS-type strengthening serum. Leon spent the night in a haze. Alcohol didn't make him sleepy, but the faces pressing close to him while drunk blanked out his thoughts, and in the end a string of strange things happened. When he woke to find Ada and Jill sleeping beside him the next morning, with the faint smell of alcohol still on them, the puzzle fell into place. He quietly straightened the sheets and slipped out. At the police station, he used the shower to wash the blood from certain parts of his body and changed into casual clothes before heading down to the underground laboratory. Tony wasn't there. The last Leon had seen of him was late the night before, leading two women with wavy hair and disappearing around a corner. Tony probably wouldn't surface until noon. The lab was empty. Yesterday's revelry had clearly paused the new country's momentum, and Leon settled in to work alone. He ordered Jarvis to pull up Tony's research log from the previous day. He'd meant to pick up Tony's results and continue, but what he saw stunned him. Tony had managed to reduce the S-virus's mutation rate to 5%. That was practically the effectiveness of a true evolution agent. For Tony, that rate of progress was astonishing. Leon read through the electronic notes carefully. Tony had hit a wall mid-experiment. Attempts to graft extremis had failed. Then, on a sudden inspiration, Tony had used his own blood as the medium, and experimental efficiency skyrocketed. It made sense. Tony's physiology, altered by the world consciousness, turned his blood into an astonishingly adaptable medium for integrating viruses. By analyzing how the virus behaved when it entered Tony's blood, he successfully fused extremis with the S-virus and drove mutation probability down to 5%. He'd called the result the Type S2 evolution virus, Leon's own naming habit at work. Further work hadn't gone smoothly. Even having found the path, Tony couldn't push the mutation rate lower. At the bottom of the log, he'd written a conclusion. Viruses are defined by contagion and mutation. To achieve fully safe evolution, we cannot use viruses as carriers. We need a new medium. Leon read the line over twice. A new medium. He muttered ideas aloud. E-mold? Plaga-parasite? No, none of those will do, he read in the log. They're unstable external agents. We need something else. He scanned his surroundings. His gaze caught the vials and syringes on the bench, and a flash of inspiration struck. Of course, the super soldier serum. He slapped the table in excitement. Jarvis, do you have any archives on the super soldier serum? Partial formulas? Anything. Young Master Leon, there is a relevant file on the main server cluster of the Stark Industries Park, Jarvis replied, but it is incomplete. That's enough, Leon grinned. He used his traversing ability, vanishing and reappearing the next instant, slipped a USB into the terminal, and a flood of super soldier data poured out. This time there's no way this can fail, he said, stroking his chin. By noon, a sleepy Tony finally stumbled into the lab. He'd meant to tease Leon, but when he learned Leon's new direction, he couldn't sit still. He pulled on a research suit and joined immediately. Time slipped by. 6 hours disappeared in the hum of instruments and calculations. When the precision synthesis machine chimed, the golden solution poured into a clear syringe. Leon and Tony stared, both awed. Look at that, Tony said, holding the syringe up like a trophy. We actually did it. In this moment, we're Prometheus. Leon took the syringe and held it to the light. It can lift any being in the world onto a new rung, make them a new species. Not an exaggeration. It's like stealing fire from the gods. He set the syringe down and summarized, fingers counting the components. S-virus, E-mold, Plaga-parasite, and extremis. We referenced the super soldier serum modifications and fused the mutation and evolution factors of these 4 keys into one reagent. This new compound has no infectivity, no side effects, only the ladder of evolution. He looked at Tony. After injection, it doesn't just boost strength, physique, speed, and cognition. It also grants virus immunity, super regeneration, limb extension, fungal control, parasitic bloodline integration and manipulation, and the ability to generate and control temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees. It's perfect. There's no better word. Then what shall we call it? Leon asked. SS-type enhanced serum seems fitting. It stems from the S-virus. Tony snorted. Sounds bland. Since it's so powerful, how about super soldier awesome plus-sized serum? We've outdone that old man Howard, Leon grimaced. That's awful. Fine, SS-type enhanced serum it is, Tony mock protested. Your name's no masterpiece either. Sounds like cheap industrial branding. Suit yourself. It's our serum, Leon said and grew serious. And don't tell me you want to roll this out everywhere on Earth. Tony frowned. If we do that, we invite disaster, more crises, more conflict. You know that. Of course not. Leon produced 2 smaller syringes and lined up 3 vials on the bench. Remember our prior results. He pointed to each reagent. This one is SS1, only the S-virus traits. The middle is SS2, SS1 plus extremis. And this final one, he tapped the golden syringe, is our SS3, the perfected version. I've thought it through. SS1 will be the mass market version. SS2 will be limited to trusted people. SS3 is for you. Tony barked a laugh. You're giving the best one to me? Leon patted his shoulder. The first 2 can be synthesized directly. SS3 requires your blood as a raw material. It's intrinsically yours. Wow, you're making me so emotional I'm about to cry, Tony said, leaning back and overacting. If you hadn't taken 400 cc of my blood all at once earlier, I'd be shedding real tears. That was for the experiment, Leon said with a half smile. Come on, let's get you something to replenish your blood. Tony wrinkled his nose. Something good? You mean that sticky cereal they serve in this doomsday raccoon city? You say it's the end of the world. What else do you expect? Leon was speaking when a fluctuation descended, a subtle shift in the air and the instruments. His expression went blank as something registered in him. Chapter 79. The Wings Are Growing. What happened? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Tony stopped, surprised. He remembered Leon's strange look in the forest the day before. Ah, did the world consciousness come back? Leon froze for a few seconds, then nodded with an odd expression. It was complicated, but the short version, it said the SS serum won't do. It wants the infectious evolution agent we used before. What? Is it malfunctioning? It doesn't even have a brain, Tony scoffed. Why not use the SS serum? Because the SS serum is too stable. It removes the possibility of further evolution. Leon was at a loss for words. It wants something that's stable enough to spread, but still capable of evolving, still liable to mutate. Tony put his hands on his hips. That's an interesting idea. Keep evolving. Sounds a lot like the stuff Obadiah used to whisper when he gave me ideas. Did he give you weird suggestions too, like colorful black? Leon asked. Something like that. I always ignored him and did my own thing. No wonder he wanted to get rid of you. Maybe, but I'm not about to build some rifle that can heat, cool, and navigate itself like he suggested. Strange clients all over the world, Leon muttered and went back to the lab bench. Still, with the experience of developing the SS serum, making a new S-virus should be simple. He had no intention of refusing the world consciousness. If it kept appearing, it would be better to have some leverage. If he later controlled the biohazard world, he could extract the world consciousness and plug it into Jarvis as company. 5 minutes later, the final version of the S-virus was complete. An infection with a mutation rate of 1 in 1,000, its effects almost identical to the prototype, and precisely what was needed to permit ongoing evolution across organisms. The world consciousness was ecstatic, sending a flood of delight, urging him to spread the virus like a gleeful, tail-wagging hound. All right, Leon promised. After I eat with Tony, I'll find people to test it on. He shrugged at Tony, and they headed for the Research Institute elevator. The carnival yesterday had emptied offices. The institute was deserted until they left. Even the police station had only a few officers on duty. Leon grumbled that such lax officialdom wouldn't run a country well, until he ran into Jane and learned she had declared a day off for everyone. The president had decreed a holiday because Leon had saved the world yesterday. It was to be a new Thanksgiving Day. Leon had to marvel at how efficient the new government could be. But when he saw Jane, beautiful, composed, she wasn't in a good mood. In the former police director's office, Jane crossed her arms. Leon, what's wrong with you? She demanded. Tony had already slipped away when he saw the tension, taking the two women with big hair off somewhere. You should be asking me that, Jane shot back. You did something outrageous, then abandoned Ada and me for a whole day. I thought you'd run off to avoid punishment. Avoid punishment is a phrase for criminals. You can't use it casually, Leon replied, unfazed. You two were drunk, started arguing, and then decided to be together. You can't blame me for that. You weren't even that drunk, Jane flared. You were just tipsy, using that as an excuse to rush off. Even so, you shouldn't have left us like that. I didn't abandon you. I even tucked the covers in before I left, Leon said, pouring water from a paper cup. I was at the lab doing experiments with Tony. Nobody told me today was a holiday. Jane's face flushed. I wondered why the place was so empty. A door creaked and Ada peered in. Of course I was waiting for you to call me in, she said, stepping in with slightly wobbly legs, her recovery from injury still ongoing. I didn't want to interrupt my boss and my rival. Jane bristled at the word rival. Then why didn't you just pretend you didn't hear and leave? Oh, really? I thought the president and I were on the same side. Ada wandered over and, half joking, took a deep sniff of Leon. Besides, compared to us two inexperienced newcomers, some people's skills are impressive. Jane's eyes flicked to Leon. No wonder it felt so. At the time, could it be that you had other things? Cough. Stop bickering, both of you. Leon coughed into his hand. One of you is the president and the other the head of intelligence. You're arguing at a time like this. How is the country supposed to function? They had no answer. In the face of Leon's deflection, they went quiet. He spread his hands. Look, as colleagues, we should have a good, honest talk. What can't be solved by communication? If there's still a problem, it just means we haven't communicated enough. Before you can preach about communication, Jane began, let me finish my question. Oh, so impatient, Ada teased, following him out. The next morning, Leon woke in a familiar bed. He roused the two little elves beside him, did some morning exercises, washed up, and they left together. The police station lobby was a sharp contrast to yesterday's emptiness. Today it buzzed with civil servants. Tony sat at a table eating, dark circles under his eyes and his face pale, looking worn out. Leon shoved a baguette into his mouth and chewed. Tony, did you get up to bad things with the two big-haired women again last night? Leon asked. Look at you, acting like that all day. Do you still look like a scientist? Tony shot back. Leon took the moral high ground. If you keep that up, what about Pepper? Tony raised an eyebrow. I paid her this month. I even gave her strawberries a few days ago. She's not even my girlfriend yet, so how am I being unfair? Pepper is allergic to strawberries, Tony. Leon's tone turned serious. Tony nodded, sipping his milk. Exactly. She yelled at me when she got them. Serves you right. Leon watched him and took another bite of the baguette, which tasted indescribably bland. By the way, Tony jabbed, what did you do after the party the last 2 nights? Are you being fair to that agent sister in your fortress? She's my subordinate, thank you. Leon poured half of Tony's milk into a paper cup. There, subordinate. Tony grinned and raised his cup. Let's toast the subordinate. All right, and to your two big-haired ladies. They clinked cups and drank. Leon patted Tony's arm. But seriously, if you're doing continuous, high-intensity stuff, you have to take care of your body. If I hadn't had blood drawn yesterday, I'd be fine, Tony protested. Blood draw makes a difference. I'd be full of vigor if not for that. Healthy is great, isn't it? Tony watched Leon's back as he stood to leave. He bit his baguette, hesitated, then sat up. No, I should get to the lab and finish the live experiment, inject the serum. This is an alternate world. I can't let that kid get arrogant on his own. With that, he pushed his chair back and headed toward the research institute. Chapter 80, Strengthening the Whole People, October 31st afternoon. Raccoon City Police Department conference room. You mean to tell me the virus, with only a 1 in 1,000 chance of mutating after infection, has already been solved by you? Jill blurted, standing up in disbelief. Are you serious, Leon? She wasn't the only one. Everyone in the conference room rose as one. Surprised, anxious faces turned toward Leon and Tony, who sat at the head of the table. The virus that had baffled scientists around the world had apparently been conquered by these two brothers in just 2 days. If someone had shouted that Stark was a god, no one would have batted an eye. "Calm down," Tony said, nudging Leon aside so he could take the stage. "I get it. You're all thinking, did God play a joke on me this morning?" He performed for them. "But it's true. I swear it in the name of Iron Man. The apocalypse is over. It ends today." He spread his arms theatrically, as if embracing the whole world. For a moment, no one responded. Everyone was still reeling from the shock of the news. Tony paused, cleared his throat, then awkwardly beckoned. "So, should we do something? Cheer? Scream? Celebrate?" It took a beat, and then the room erupted, doing exactly what Tony had asked. People rushed forward, hoisted him into the air, chanting "Iron Man" over and over. Leon quietly stepped back into a corner and watched his older brother being tossed up and down, grinning and calling to be thrown higher. Ada Wong leaned beside him. "You and your brother have very different styles," she said. Tony's exuberance was obvious. "He's a showman," Leon answered. "I wasn't talking about Tony," Ada teased. "Have you noticed your own desire to perform? It's pretty strong, too." Leon arched an eyebrow. "Thanks for helping me find common ground between the two of us." "You're welcome." Ada linked her pinky with his. "They'll celebrate again tonight. So, the usual place," Leon cut in without hesitation. "Okay, boss." Ada blinked, but the expected party never happened. In an apocalyptic environment, there was little time or resources to waste. And once the final S virus had been proven safe, the mood in the city changed from celebration to action. Hope was burning bright. Everyone wanted the enhancement now, so they could get out and reclaim the city. Jill's provisional government recruited volunteers on the spot. Not a single person in that conference room hesitated when asked. They weren't afraid of dying in the lab. They only feared a failed result. These public servants were true warriors, willing to sacrifice for the greater good. The order of the experiments was decided by lottery. The first name drawn was a new cop named Kennedy. He had received the lofty nickname 3 Lights from Leon at the banquet 2 nights earlier. Half an hour later, in a sealed underground lab, dozens watched through thick glass as Kennedy lay strapped to the experimental table. Tubes fed nutrient fluid into him from every direction. Leon, wearing a protective suit, stood over him with the final stock of the S virus. The golden solution was injected, and the volunteers outside pressed their hands to the glass, fists clenched. 3 Lights, hang in there, someone shouted. You can't fail. You got that name from Mr. Lion. At the banquet, Kennedy had asked Leon for a nickname. After some mock-serious thought, Leon had said Kennedy embodied high light, sunlight, and faint light, so he dubbed him 3 Lights. The name stuck. Ever since, coworkers teased Kennedy about it every time they saw him. Back in the lab, the virus took. After a brief calm, veins bulged across Kennedy's skin, muscles ballooned, and he let out a piercing howl. Shackled at the hips, he lifted against the restraints as if trying to wrench free. Leon quickly held him down on the table, expression unreadable through the respirator, as Kennedy screamed and writhed. 7 minutes passed. The people outside watched on tenterhooks. When Kennedy finally calmed, Leon inspected him, using an imaging scanner built into the suit, then manually probing bones and muscles. "All right," he announced. "Enhancement successful. No signs of mutation. Next." Leon lifted the surprisingly heavy Kennedy and carried him to a hospital bed in the observation ward. People erupted into cheers. With Kennedy's successful trial, the rest went faster. Marvin, Elliot, Fatty, Carlos, and others were injected with the finalized S virus in short order. All were enhanced without mutation. To speed things along, many of the newly boosted volunteers helped administer the injections. By nightfall, everyone in the temporary official residence of the Republic of Colorado who wanted the enhancement had been injected. Of more than 1,700 people, only one experienced an infection and mutation, but even that person was stabilized and recovered after receiving the antiviral serum. Those who required the antiviral serum developed antibodies afterward and could no longer receive a second enhancement. In the coming age of global evolution, that group would be left out, unable to undergo the upgrades. If anyone wanted to blame a culprit for that fate, they could only point to the world consciousness. After arranging for the newly enhanced to remain under observation, Leon returned to the lab with Ada, Jill, and Sherry. He injected the 3 with the SS2 serum, an upgraded formula that incorporated traits of extremis. The results were immediate. All three gained super regenerative abilities. Sherry was still growing. Jill and Ada evolved even further, their strength exceeding 40 tons and their running speeds approaching the speed of sound. Their physical capabilities would continue to increase in the following period. What surprised Leon more than their physical augmentations was their reaction to the world consciousness decision on the evolution serum. Jill, Ada, and Sherry told him they understood and even supported the idea that the world's evolution should not be suppressed. That made Leon rethink his assumptions. Maybe he had misjudged the world consciousness, or perhaps its stance wasn't as radical as he'd feared. In the days that followed, after the Stark brothers observed and confirmed that the enhanced showed no abnormal symptoms, Jill's provisional government began rolling out the final S-virus across the city. Anyone willing to accept enhancement would be provided a full set of services by the government. The citizens trusted the provisional leadership. Registration points were packed from the moment the announcement went out. In the streets, people shouted praise for Jill, calling her the goddess of victory and promising anything in return for her protection. Over the past month, she had stood at the front lines, taking blows from super zombies and saving countless lives. Her popularity was earned. Meanwhile, while the S-virus rollout in Raccoon City moved at full speed, Leon and Tony completed the SS3 serum experiments as well.